Ergo, if you were listening to this podcast, understandably, you may have questions that you would not have had an understanding to when you first watched the original film.
Write that fucking scene.
Hello, everyone.
This is merely the 6th iteration of the Waffle Press Retrospectives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Retrospectives. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. I am the architect of this program.
Does that make me the Oracle?
Yes.
I'm not good at predicting things.
Yes, but consider this. This is a strange film. That's my co-host, Matt Garingo.
All right.
Matrix sequels. We're doing them both at the same time. Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, both directed by Lana and Lily Wachowski, and written.
Seemed like a good idea at the time to do them both together.
It did, and you know what? I completely stand by this decision because for this rewatch, I rewatched them both back to back. That is how I spent my Sunday afternoon. Or was it Saturday? Do you remember? I don't even fucking remember.
I don't know, but you were texting me.
Yeah.
Diego's adamant of like, I'm not going to let you fucking know what I think of these movies until the day we record. And then, of course, he texts me.
Yeah, I texted him immediately after because something happened. And I'll get into that. Because you still technically don't know what I think about the films.
I can't. I'm sure people will be shocked when they find out what you think of the Matrix sequels.
I've been vocally open about being pro Matrix sequels. Yeah. I've not.
The guy who likes everything likes the Matrix sequels.
Well, hey. I didn't like fucking. You know what?
See, you can't think of one.
Yeah.
You can't think of one.
I didn't like V for Vendetta.
Yeah, that's a weird movie.
It is. If the Wachowskis had directed it themselves, like all the way through and not just partly the way through, I think we'd be looking at another all-timer.
Even weirder, isn't that a movie that, like, I have not seen it in forever, and I know it deviates from the comic a lot, but doesn't the fascist government kind of take over by making a fake disease and then handing out the vaccines?
I think so.
Isn't that a thing? But also, like, that's a weird thing where, like, I think the conspiracy ends up not being true or something. Like, it's a weird movie. Mm-hmm. I have not seen... You know what? I put it on, like, 2 years ago, and I was like, this is weird, and then I got bored.
It is kind of boring. Hugo Weaving obviously fucking kills it.
Hugo Weaving fucking rules in that. Yeah.
And he also kills it in this film, returning as Agent Smith. How does he return, Matt?
He's just there. He's unplugged, man.
Neo frees him, but how?
Freedom.
How? How does he free him?
Matrix.
All right, so let's get into it. Matt, what do you think about the Matrix Reloaded?
These movies are good.
Both of them.
I was gonna say. I was trying to say that I thought it'd be a good idea to do these two together because I will say I think the if there is a flaw to be found in the Matrix, it's that they kind of don't work separated. At least that's maybe what I thought at the time before we recorded this. And then I took 8 pages of notes on these movies. So maybe this episode might go a little long. But hey, let's talk about, before we talk about the movies themselves, you already talked about your history with these, because you watched all of them together when you were younger.
Yep.
And what was that like? Like, we talked about the first one, but like, how did the sequels play?
At a certain point, I was like, oh yeah, talking. Like, you know, at a certain age, you're not really, like, you're not fully invested in, like, movies as an art form. Mm-hmm. So the talking stuff, I was like, yeah, you know, like it didn't feel like it had changed my world at the time, if that makes sense. And
but you are watching them on the same night, correct?
Yeah, the same afternoon.
Okay.
And yeah, it did bleed over into the night.
Okay, yeah, I would assume.
Yeah, and I thought the action was awesome, and then that was kind of like it. And then I like as I got older, I found out people didn't like the third one especially, and I was like, I don't know, the fucking robots are so cool. Like he believes. That's why he like it made sense to me. You know, that last one always made sense to me. So know that going into this. I could definitely see problems with Reloaded even at that age, because I was like, yeah, I wasn't super into it. And as I got older, I was like, was it just because it wasn't like, because that movie has a lot of action, but I find even now that it may not meld the action and visual storytelling so much with the exposition always.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
Which is also maybe kind of the point, but it still is kind of a roadblock for me. At times, and I promise I'll get into all that, but it yeah, I always liked the sequels mostly, and then I kind of went through that phase where I was like, oh, I guess they are bad. And then I quickly snapped back to no, Matrix Revolutions is the shit. This has some of the coolest shit you'll ever see in a film, but we'll get there. How about you?
Never mind that shit. My relationship, so like I said, I watched these on DVD when I was very young. And so I basically was able to get hyped for the Matrix sequels. Matrix Reloaded ends up being the first R-rated film I see in theaters. Good call, Dad. We talked about a group orgy scene. And I'll say, like, I saw that movie, really enjoyed it, liked it, and I, like, got it enough, you know? Like, I'm not going to say I got the big ideas that were going on, but I got enough of the functional ideas that I thought it was interesting, right? For what you are as a kid at that age. I do remember, though, alright, so Matrix Revolutions is coming out. It's like a November release. The school year has started by that point. A fucking friend of mine fucking lies to me on the playground the day I'm gonna go see it, saying that Morpheus dies in the movie. I never got over that shit. You motherfucker. I'm trying to remember if I knew going into it that there was kind of like some negative buzz around the third one, at least. But I will say I do remember going into the third one and being a little underwhelmed. I'm 10 years old at the time, you know? Like, I didn't come out like, fuck this movie, but I did come out kind of like, like, not as excited as I was with Reloaded. And then I do remember the vibe coming out of the theater, like, people not being happy.
No.
And I do remember people, like, in the hallway outside the theater, like, arguing, like, what the fuck was that ending about? And then, like, you know, for years, I kind of just watched them every now and then. But, like, the third one was definitely the one I watched the least. Like, I don't think... There was a long time where I think I kind of only would watch parts of Revolutions. Like, maybe, like, the last fight and the big battle for Zion, but not the rest of the movie, for whatever reason. And then, yeah, I think I went through a phase where I was kind of like, I had got wind of, like, what the popular opinion was on them, and then people were like, do you realize these characters are boring? And I was like, wow, that's so right, internet person. And, yeah, you know, we all have to spend our time in that weird train station. But hey, guess what I did in between our last episode and this episode?
Did you watch the Nostalgia Critic episode on this?
Oh, fuck no.
Okay, I was like, don't do that to yourself. You're better than that.
You know what? I posted about it on Twitter. I was going to make a joke post where I was going to take screenshots from his review where, you know, he's dressed up like fucking whoever. He put sunglasses. He did the bare minimum to look like he was in the Matrix, and then just post screenshots and be like, wow, the Wachowski sisters are geniuses.
Oh,
you know, like that classic joke. His parody looks so bad that you wouldn't get it was a Matrix parody unless I told you. It just looks like fucking people with sunglasses standing around in a warehouse. Because that's what it is. No. What I did was I made a timeline between the release of the first Matrix and the release of the Matrix sequels, all the shifts in culture that happened. Because I think that's very important for what we're about to discuss.
Okay.
I should say, I kind of only made half the list because I got distracted by other things and then never bothered to finish it.
Well, the big one is 9/11.
Of course, but we will get to that. Much like the United States got to.
No.
We will get to it. So March 31st, 1999, Matrix is released. Boom. New hotness. April 20th, the Columbine High School Massacre. Which we discussed on our last episode. Those kids, those fucking dorks that shot up their school, they wore trench coats. Everyone thought they were part of a group called the Trenchcoat Mafia. This wasn't true. But a reminder that at the time, trench coats were still very dangerous. Something that I couldn't date exactly, but I listed under Columbine because it is important. Interactive flash game called Pico's School, which is kind of a dark parody of the Columbine High School Massacre, was uploaded to Newgrounds.com.
Oh my god,
now
Newgrounds.
We've discussed Newgrounds, and this is important. This is officially kind of the beginning of the Newgrounds people of our generation kind of know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other websites kind of pop up between then and I believe like 2001 we get E-Bombs World, Something Awful, You're the Man Now Dog, College Humor. And these are important because this is all, you got to remember, kids, the pre-YouTube internet. Like where you had to kind of go looking for things. All these websites became, I would say, for between now and the Matrix sequels release, a good fourth of the content were parodies of the Matrix. Am I wrong?
No, it even pops up in Jimmy Neutron.
It's but I'm talking about specifically like that's, you know, a cartoon making it. Like
yeah, but it is everywhere.
These are people with a lot of free time making their own Matrix parodies. Because that's how much this hit the culture. A bunch of kids hyped up on fucking Mel Brooks movies trying to do their Mel Brooks Matrix before Mel Brooks can. And thank God Mel Brooks never tried, frankly. I can think of... Can you think of any from that era?
No, but
I remember
like nothing specifically, but it was like embedded into the internet culture.
I remember people would just redub the movies in like Flash a lot. I remember that. I remember there being a lot of parodies like that, where it was like fan translations kind of almost. I remember there was a lot of like Mario ones, which I guess was also the thing at the time. Like pixel art was big. So there was a lot of like, oh, Mario's gonna fly around like Neo from the Matrix now. So I think that's very important. May 19th, 1999, Star Wars Episode 1 is released. I don't know if you are aware of this, Diego, but the response to Episode 1 was very divisive.
Yes.
And I think that more than anything kind of cements Matrix as the new thing, right? Like, all the people that were disappointed with Episode 1 jumped ship to the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Right? And I will find very specific examples of that coming up. Also in May of that year, New X-Men by Grant Morrison starts getting published. And have you read New X-Men?
No.
Grant Morrison's run. Have you at least seen it?
No.
That is the new outfit design of the characters, which is very Matrix inspired, and will influence the look of the soon to be released X-Men films. The first X-Men film is released in the year 2000, and that is definitely, they're in like leather, outfits basically.
Do you, just making a note of it, do you have Grant Morrison down as a topic later as well?
I actually don't.
Okay. Well, I
probably should have.
Yeah,
But
well, Grant Morrison, writer of oh fuck, what is the name of that thing? I had it. I just had it. I'm sorry, I lost it right there. Anyways,
I
he
hate to
wrote a
say,
comic that apparently was a huge influence on the Matrix that has neither been confirmed nor denied, but he noted some very similar stuff and was like, "Yeah, I'm not like offended by it. I just, it's
hey, it might be. I don't know as much of Morrison's earlier work, so.
The Invisibles is what it's
Oh,
called."
The Invisibles. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he wrote? They wrote a lot about it in their book Super Gods.
Okay.
And I was gonna pull out my copy again. Like I had all these plans, like I always do, and then just life fucking gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, July 13th, 1999. The first Tom era of Toonami begins. Now, this is the first time to not like look. There was anime on TV before then, but this is kind of kicking the doors open to anime reaching a wider audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Dragon Ball Z, you got Gundam, you got Sailor Moon. Now that's all being broadcast to children across America, and this is only 6 months after The Matrix. Now this niche thing is now going to become this very popular thing among children. December 10th, a very important event. Deuce Bigalow Male Gigolo is released and has the first, from what I can find in my research, the first recognized theatrical parody of The Matrix. There's a fight that kind of does the Trinity thing in it. So there's that. And I was going to make a list of all the parodies. I decided not to do that because literally there was like 100 between 1999 and 2003. So I'm going to spare you from that. But I am going to bring up movies that you can kind of see as adjacent or parodies that were very specific and could show just the breadth of The Matrix, right? All right, we're getting into the year 2000. Now, what important cultural movie came out in January 2000?
Unbreakable.
That's right, The Boondock Saints. A movie which has a lot of gunfights set to techno music.
Which was discussed on the early days of this podcast with our mutual friend Shannon Strucci. And I gotta say, I stand by every word of that. And I'm pretty sure she does too.
Like we've evolved on a lot of opinions in the history of this podcast, not Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
October 22nd, 2000, Charlie's Angels is released, which I only bring up because I just rewatched it, and man, does it have like terrible wire work fighting that is clearly like trying to be like this. The Matrix has established this as the new style. It's just, these are, I think, two prime examples of like how the coolest shit ever that was established in the first Matrix is already getting watered down by shitty imitators.
Mm-hmm.
And I think gunfights set to techno music and terrible wirework fighting are like two of the easiest things where if you don't get it right, it's just embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is starting to kind of maybe poison the well a little bit. November 7th, 2000, George Bush steals the election. So now we are entering a new era of the United States. February 2001, in jolly old England, the episode of Space that parodies The Matrix is released. Have you ever watched Space?
Yeah. Fuck, I haven't thought about it in years, though. It feels like...
It's still fun. It's still a lot of fun. They did an episode where they're basically chased by agents. They did a few Matrix parodies throughout the show, but I'm thinking of the one that's kind of an extended parody. It should also be noted that this episode, a lot of it is about how the Phantom Menace sucked. So these two things are like happening parallel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. And I have the Spaced DVD that was released, I can't remember how long ago. all the episodes came with commentary tracks. They go into detail in the commentary tracks about how they felt about Star Wars at the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That, like, Season 1 of Spaced is very much pro-Star Wars, Season 2 is very much anti-Star Wars. But they also talk about how, and I think this DVD is released in, like, 2007, that revisiting the episodes, the only jokes that kind of they felt embarrassed about were the Matrix jokes. That they were kind of like, we thought the Matrix was the coolest shit at the time, and now looking back, this is just kind of embarrassing. Which, again, hinting at what's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
March 5th, 2001, Conker's Bad Fur Day for the N64 parodies the lobby scene. Again. So it's even Nintendo's doing it. Alright, now here's a genuine cultural touchstone moment.
Oh,
May
wait,
18th.
whoa. Are you dissing Conker's Bad Fur Day?
Yes, I am dissing Conker's Bad Fur Day. Hey, whatever, you know, Conker, there are fans. May 18th, 2001. A movie that is officially part of Western canon. One of the most important films of the 21st century. It could not have been released 6 months later. And it's one of the highest grossing films of the year. And it has a Matrix parody in it.
I thought you were going to say Shrek.
I was waiting for you to say Shrek, because it is Shrek.
Okay, yeah, Shrek.
Shrek, Fiona gets into a parody. Remember, she does her hair when they freeze her in midair with the bullet time. Do you remember that?
Oh, yep. I do remember that.
Remember how fucking funny that was?
It's a good movie.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
That joke was so good, they parodied it again in Shrek 4D, the amusement park ride.
Oh. I missed the boat on that one, I think.
Yeah, I think they finally closed the last Shrek 4D.
Oh, bummer.
You missed the era where you could go to Universal Studios and there would be an animatronic donkey kind of looking through a window, and some underpaid, clearly white employee trying to do a donkey voice.
Ooh. Oh, no.
Oh, what a great time at the amusement park. All right, another movie that I have brought up recently, released on June 8th. I said the opening of this movie is one of the most overconfident openings in movie history. Swordfish. A movie I will somehow find a way to do on this podcast, which is a hacker movie. And then not only does it have bullet time in it, it has a pipe bomb bullet time scene. And it is like one of the worst effects you've ever seen. It's also drenched in like that terrible, like, I guess it's Tony Scott lighting before Tony Scott was even doing. When did Tony Scott start doing the, like, this is what Mexico looks like?
Man on Fire. That's a
Man on Fire. So that's later, but this is what California looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair, Tony Scott and like the music video eras of like the 90s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
They're really
right.
like leaning into like this high saturation, the high contrast look, which honestly I like in bursts.
Yeah, although Swordfish, it's like so fucking turned up that the movie just looks orange. Like that's it. That's the primary color of Swordfish, a movie about hacking. July 29th, Pootie Tang.
Oh, fuck.
There's bullet time in Pootie Tang. I bring that up because I like the movie Pootie Tang. July 4th, Cats and Dogs. Matrix parody. When he fights the, like, Russian cat.
I remember this. Yeah, I saw that in theaters.
July 23rd, Max Payne, the video game, comes out.
Oh, fuck.
The bullet time video game is released. So that's very important. All right, September 2nd, 2001. Adult Swim begins airing. At first, it's just Cowboy Bebop is the only anime they show. The next year, they'll start showing stuff like Yu Yu Hakusho, Big O, and Outlaw Star. So again, now we're not only getting the kind of kid-marketed anime, we're now getting the quote-unquote adult anime on a major cable network. All right, then 9/11 happens. And I just wrote in all caps, never forget. Do I have to explain what 9/11 was?
I want to hear you explain it for the first time in detail.
Well, all right. If I were to explain it in detail, we would go for 4 hours.
Okay, now then.
But I'm gonna say, if I had to give a 1-sentence summary of 9/11, it was the day America realized that buildings blowing up wasn't actually that cool. And that now, from now on...
Wow.
Hey, never forget. From now on, all Americans know what it looks like when a building collapses. Which, I'm not even trying to say that as a joke. It's just like, now you can't watch any movie the same ever again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even the fucking Avengers had to fucking make their effects look a certain way. Fucking 10 years later. I will say, I just want to throw out this. I have this theory that, like, the reason why Columbine and 9/11 stick in our brains so much as opposed to other events is, I think a big part of it is that a huge chunk of Americans watched them happen on TV. I think if an attack had happened like 9/11, and it had killed just as many people, but it had been like in one big burst, and it wasn't something that we watched play out on live television, I don't think it would have left as big an impact. Now, I don't think that means George Bush wouldn't have used it as an excuse to go to war. Mm. And I don't think that means America wouldn't have been convinced to go to it, but I don't know if it would have left that weird next 4 years where we think there are just terrorists everywhere.
Yeah.
And then Columbine is the same thing, which Columbine's a weird one where we handled shootings differently in 99. Everyone thought it was a hostage situation and not a shooting. And by the time the news started covering the school, it was like hours of just footage of police rescuing kids. The shooting had been over by the time the news started broadcasting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing in the news caught the actual shooting, but I think because so many Americans were like, this is an event unfolding in front of your eyes, I think that's why it stuck out to so many people. I guess the big one that doesn't, that kind of maybe disproves my theory, is Waco, which happens a few years before, which played out for literally weeks, and then doesn't get talked about that much. At least compared to the other two.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Does oversaturation count with real life stuff? Because I think I think it does. I mean, look at how we're responding to COVID right now. Yeah, and at a certain point, you hear people, well, we just have to learn to live with it, and it's that's a psychotic thing to say, but they would never understand the weight of what they just said, Mm. And it's no, you don't have to live with. What are you talking about?
Well, here's what's so weird about COVID. We're all losing our minds, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge divide. Like I said, I said at one point, if you think the country's divided now, and I think I was saying this pre the election, it's going to be even worse when we get out of this, and half the country is devastated by COVID, and the other half thinks COVID was a hoax. And I think one of the weird things that's happening is that we're all going through mental crisis right now, even on a subconscious level. But because everyone lives in their own bubble now, it's some of us are it's COVID, and the others are it is the COVID conspiracy. And I think that's why everyone's rapidly going insane at ridiculous speeds. Because I think people are getting numb in some way, but numb in that way you get numb to trauma, which is a horrible thing, I think we're all just it's we're looking at the numbers, and it's wow, it's that's kind of what the numbers were at this date. We're it's 9/11 multiple times over. Mm-hmm. at this point.
It's 9/11 like every day.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think on some level we're all absorbing that, you know? Even the people, I think there was that whole thing of like, COVID's not more deadly than the flu and whatever, like all that talk initially. And I think now that the numbers have gotten high enough, that talk has kind of gone away a little bit. But I don't think we all know how to process it. I think it's too big for any of us. And we're all at the same time kind of awake that the whole country's broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I'll actually talk about this a little more later. In some things, I think Matrix Reloaded maybe could have done to make it a smoother landing, I guess. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, and I promise we'll talk about the actual movie stuff in a second. But this is important.
Yeah, I'm almost done because like the next few years I kind of just
I am pro what you are doing. I would not let you continue if I was like, all right, let's not waste our time. But this whole like the way culture moved and shifted is vital to understanding the reception of these films and how they were made. And I have more about the production side of it, which is not super related to the politics of it. Only the business side of it, but we'll get there.
It should be noted, though, that a weird thing about the Matrix sequels is they started filming before 9/11. And they filmed for a year and a half, which is kind of nuts.
Do you know how many shooting days?
How many shooting days?
So they took breaks because a year and a half is a long fucking time, and it's more than this, but 267 shooting days, I believe.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I think Kubrick is still higher though with Eyes Wide Shut.
yeah. I'll bring it up. But Bill Pope gives a very spirited discussion on the process of the sequels.
Spirited is a word.
Yes.
I'm aware of Bill Pope's comments.
Bill Pope is like one of our greatest living artists, legendary cinematographer, and there's a lot to talk about with his work here. But continue, please.
All right, and then here's the thing that like I think we all kind of remember, but don't totally. Immediately after 9/11, like a month after 9/11, we suddenly get Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter movie, and then Lord of the Rings in December. And that is this weird shift back to like, I don't want to diss Lord of the Rings, I guess, but there's a little bit of a like simpler fantasy air to those movies, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think there is I think those movies are great, and there's a lot going on to them, and there's bigger ideas. But if you want to talk about why they maybe appealed to the public, I think there was a softness to them that kind of made them more appealing. At least Fellowship, you know, that at least got people on board.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie starts with a birthday party, you know. And that like, and it's a series that's very, and Harry Potter too. They're series that are very reassuring about good's triumph over evil, which is very much what we were hoping to be reminded about at the time. So that's like one of the first kind of like movie shifts that's really happening. All right. For some reason, I wrote down that in January 25th, 2002, Kung Pao Enter the Fist was released. A movie I remember the trailers being on TV all the time. And I remember him doing bullet time with a cow shooting milk out of its udder.
I'm not even joking when I say I've seen that trailer like at least 1,000 times because of that, like that hype to that era.
Was it on Cartoon Network?
It must have fucking been.
It must have been. What a weird thing.
Yeah. That was fucking everywhere.
Never got me to see it.
I finally saw it once, like 5 years ago at a friend's house. I don't remember it though.
All right.
But I definitely saw it finally.
That's the biggest anticlimax of finally meeting someone who has seen that movie.
Yeah, sorry.
June 14th, 2002, Bourne Identity is released.
Oh, fuck yeah!
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm not the biggest Bourne fan. I think I've made that clear on the show. I don't like hate him. I'm just not the biggest fan.
Yeah. Here's a hot take since we're on the topic. I prefer the Daniel Craig James Bond spy films to the Bourne films, even though they themselves are a response to the Bourne films.
Here's the weird thing, not to go back to 9/11, but Paul Greengrass, I think, really, like, he developed, like, great skills on the Bourne movies, and then I think he used them better on movies like United 93 and then Captain Phillips, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Captain Phillips is fucking great, especially.
Yeah. But, like, the stuff, you know, it's one of those things where, like, I think people kind of, like, hype up United 93 as, like, goddamn, you just can't fucking watch those last 30 minutes of that goddamn movie because it's so goddamn intense, because it feels like you're really on this goddamn plane. But, like, I'm always impressed, even in the Bourne movies, too, I'm impressed with, like, the dudes on the computers scenes and, like, the intensity he shoots those with, you know? Mm-hmm. And I wish more people did that as opposed to trying to do the shaky cam action, which I think kind of works in spurts. And I think Paul Greengrass ended up being the guy to do it best, and I'm not even, like, the biggest fan of it. You know?
No, that's fair. Him and his editors, like, made some real magic there, because he does have, like, shaky camera movements there, you know, which is complete opposite to The Matrix, which is, like, clean, visible action constantly. But, like, other people have tried to do that, and even, like, my beloved Quantum of Solace, I'm like, all right, I can't see what's happening here, but I can tell it's really fucking cool.
And I can say a lot about the Bourne stuff, and it's like, I can still tell what's happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much, which is crazy when, like, you think about what happens in those action scenes.
Yeah, also, every action scene's only, like, a couple minutes long, and it feels like they go on forever, but not in a way that's, like, draining, which I may go back to in this conversation. But, like, I don't know, it's very impressive directing work, and I, frankly, after Captain Phillips, I haven't seen it from my boy, Greengrass.
Yeah. I started that one movie he made and then just didn't finish it.
Yeah, he's got a couple of those, unfortunately.
He did one about that shooting. The one that was, like, in, I think, Sweden or something like that.
I missed that one, but yeah.
And it was on Netflix, and I started it, and then I kind of was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. I think I was in a bit of a mood that night. But hey. All right, July 26, 2002. Austin Powers and Goldmember is released. Now, I bring this up because Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, which was also one of the first DVDs I owned, as brought up on the previous episode, the trailers for The Spy Who Shagged Me and the movie featured extended Star Wars parodies because it was being released the same year as Phantom Menace, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is going to be the big thing on the horizon. Let's just go back to the well of Star Wars for our parodies. By the time Goldmember comes out, there is an extended fight with Fat Bastard that is explicitly a wire fighting parody. Where Fat Bastard's literally like, I hope my wire fighting team is ready. And then you see him because, you know, it's a movie. And there's a lot of, like, kind of Matrix parodies in it. And I think it's, again, like this sign of Star Wars kind of being pushed out of the way for Matrix. Matrix kind of being set up for the fall, unfortunately. I think it's achieved this place in culture so quickly that no sequels could live up to it, you know? Which I think is important. March 30th, 2003, America goes to war on a lie in Iraq. So that happened. So that's now hanging over the country. Now, I think... So Matrix Reloaded is released in May. I think we're still living in an era where a lot of Americans believe that the Iraq War, even if you agree with it or disagree with it, maybe won't last that long, at least. And then by the time 3 comes out in November, it's very clear that actually this thing might last a long time. Now, I have to jump the gun a little bit before we talk about the movies, because there is one movie released. I skipped over some of the superhero stuff that was going on at the time. I think you can make an argument that Matrix kind of helped normalize what will become a staple of superhero action going forward. You know, like the first Spider-Man, of course, comes out in 2002, right?
Not to talk about Spider-Man again, but the Raimi Spider-Man specifically, there's a lot of, like, I mean, really great action stuff, but it is very clearly like Sam Raimi saw The Matrix and was like, oh, I can do that too. And he can.
Yeah.
But, like, it's definitely
That one fight in the
influenced.
burning building is very specifically, kind of bullet time, but with a pumpkin bomb.
Pumpkin
like, comes
time.
into knives. Yeah.
I just rewatched
Also,
it and
like,
cried.
Spidey sense is like their kind of bullet time thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, remember when movies were like, all right, he's got Spidey sense, let's make it look cool as shit.
Yeah.
Right? And now movies just kind of have him go like, uh-oh, and then nothing visually interesting happens.
Yeah. Imagine if you made fucking your visual art form visually interesting.
Imagine if you made a movie. All right, but in between Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, one movie is released, and I think it is the movie that fucking bodied Matrix Revolutions in terms of like it was the one movie that came out that fucking was like, you know what, fuck the Matrix, this is the new thing.
I have no idea what you're gonna say. Actually,
It's a movie you like.
Return of the
2003.
King.
What?
Return of the King.
No, that's December.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh,
Curse
fuck
of the Black
yeah.
Pearl. Pirates of the Caribbean, which is kind of like a return to fun action movies, swashbuckler.
Mm-hmm.
The summer blockbuster is back, and it's I don't know if I want to use silly, but it is very much like, let's put the fun at the forefront,
Yeah, yeah.
And it is sandwiched between two movies that are like, what if we were just ideas of movies for 2 hours? And I think that is what leads to kind of like, I think a lot of people kind of came out of Reloaded not sure how to feel about it, and then Revolutions come out and people are like, you know what, fuck this. Pirates of the Caribbean is where it's at. And then, of course, the Pirates of the Caribbean does the exact thing Matrix does. Which I think the thing that happens there, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, it could be off on my timeline a little bit, but I think in between part 1 and 2 of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dark Knight comes out. I could be wrong.
You're
I'm
wrong.
off by a
part,
year.
Part 2 and
I'm
3
off
are
by a
2006, 2007.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2007, 2008.
No, and who ran Disney at that time? Was that that wasn't Eisner, right?
Well, Eisner is there when the first one comes out.
Okay, and then Iger takes over.
But there's a guy in between that no one remembers.
Okay, well, whoever that was is basically the reason those movies, like, say what you will about 2 and 3, like, they look incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we really underestimate the 2000s for having, like, the best visual effects of all time.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that, no, you can make VFX look incredible. It is, we've made it clear in this podcast, and I think a lot of people are kind of warming up to this idea finally. It is not about digital filmmaking. It is not about blaming VFX artists. It's very much these studios and corporate entities not putting the time, money, and resources behind the movies to get them to look good anymore.
Well, also, we have, the whole, like, indie to Marvel pipeline. It's not like the guys that get brought over from the indie world are, like, special effects nerds,
Mm-hmm.
It's like James Cameron was a special effects nerd,
Yeah, he works on fucking Escape from New York.
Yeah, he got into the movies because he wanted to do special effects initially, right?
Yeah, now he revolutionizes the industry every time he releases a film.
Yeah, so, like, he comes to it from that angle, whereas, like, I'm sure there are some indie guys who, like, they have ideas, and you don't have to, I mean, also, like, we talk about Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi came from, like, low-budget horror world, and also, I believe, was a magician when he was a teenager. Yeah.
That's great.
And so, like a lot of, like, the stuff he used was, like, magic tricks in, like, the early Evil Dead movies. And so these guys, they have kind of a flair for this stuff, and then we don't have a generation of filmmakers. It's just weird. It's a thing of, like, we can bemoan the, like, indie to, like, these people should kind of be getting to tell their own stories that are in their own at their own speed, but we also don't have a generation of filmmakers yet that came up primarily like with a grasp of special effects. I think that's going to change. I think with the weird kind of like shift in online media, where you start getting people who just make movies entirely in CGI on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like how often do you see like those weird monster like not like scary, I mean even the scary stuff, like that lo-fi stuff that I really like, but like how often do you see like squids or octopus like making landfall and you're like, oh, that's like a digital creation that someone made by themselves. And it looks like shockingly good. Like it takes you a second to be like, oh, this isn't real. And they did that by themselves. Like, yes. I think we're on the verge of like a filmmaking revolution this decade. We just need to like not smother it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can't. I think a lesson maybe to take away: you can't really stop a revolution. It's just when is it, you know? And it's going to come sooner or later. And I think it matters to the people who, you know, are coming up right now. Whereas if it comes later, it's too late, and if it comes too late, too early for a lot of people. So some group of people are going to get lucky. I guess is what I'm saying. But also, like, not just talking about that. Do you know who Monty Ohm is?
No, actually.
He was a web animator. He made a lot of videos.
No, I do. He just passed away a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize he was the same. I had seen his videos. I did not realize it was the same guy for the longest time. Where he made a lot of like mashup fights. Like he did Dead Fantasy, which is like Final Fantasy characters and Dead or Alive characters fighting all the time. You know, fun stuff. Like there's also like an action angle to some of it online, and I think that'll be exciting. And that's also stuff clearly inspired by The Matrix.
Yeah, and I want to further shout out Monty Ohm for my beloved Red versus Blue, which I don't know how well that's aged, but he really kind of like reinvigorated that web series with like just straight up VFX sequences that I think they're still doing to this day. It's like on season 20 now or whatever. I hopped off.
It's still going, I think.
Yeah.
I do remember though, like I kind of remember like whenever I wasn't, like I said, I didn't really know who he was when he was doing it, but like around that era was kind of when I stopped, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a weird shift, but like his work, like I gotta be honest, I don't know how well it mashed together with like the machinima content, which like sorry for using the word content, but that's kind of what it was at a point. But his work was like well choreographed and such. It was weird because that's not the format of that story. But his work was great.
And I've never seen Ruby, so which was the series he created.
Oh, okay. Like I even know about that just like through,
I know of it because
Tumblr.
it is like so insanely popular. You know, like it's one of those things where like I feel like I see it everywhere. So there's a generation coming up on that. So it's one of those things where like I kind of want to get into it just to see like what are people getting out of this. You know, There's how many episodes? There are currently 106 episodes of Ruby.
You know, that's not too bad.
And 8 seasons.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I mean, it's not like One Piece. So
yeah. So I guess I got to find time to watch Ruby. Oh boy.
We live in a strange world.
And then one other event happens that's personal to me, is that in December 2003, Cheaper by the Dozen is released, which I have stated on this podcast was the first movie I walked out of that I didn't like. So The Matrix Revolutions got in like just under that wire, where it could still kind of get that childhood innocence where I just liked everything. Or at least, I guess I say I didn't dislike a movie, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And then Cheaper by the Dozen, I was like, nah, fuck this. So, so there's where culture was leading up to Matrix Reloaded.
And also Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? I think it's also 2003 or maybe 2004. But the first movie I ever like felt visible disappointment in was the Viggo Mortensen vehicle Hidalgo.
Oh yeah, I think we've talked about.
Okay,
this,
yeah. Just I don't know why that popped up into my brain.
There was like a weird like horse movies are back. Like,
yeah, I mean,
moment
like Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
That is still like a really popular movie with like horse girls and shit.
Yeah. Do you remember the horse girls from your school?
No. I went to an all-guys high school.
Oh, yeah, you go fucking tell me that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I always forget.
No, it's all right.
I still see the horse girls in my head to this day. They will never leave.
Okay. Well, do you still see the architect from The Matrix Reloaded?
No, what else was that guy in?
No, I don't know.
All right.
He's just spouting exposition to this day.
You know, they wanted Sean Connery for that.
Interesting.
Everyone thinks they wanted Connery for Morpheus, but they wanted him for the architect, and I guess he said no.
Mm.
And you know what? That would have been a bad choice.
I think so too. They also wanted Jet Li for a role. Do you know of this?
Yeah. I know which character.
Yeah, for Seraph, who we'll get into, is just the coolest dude ever. That's his role in the film, to be the coolest dude ever.
Be the coolest guy ever.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess now's the time to talk about the movie.
Yeah, Matrix Reloaded. Yeah, go for it.
That's right, Diego. I think neither of us want to fucking throw the first thing out there.
Okay, I'll do it then. I'll do it.
No, I'll do it. I'll take the bullet. Fuck it.
Okay.
Because there's two sides to basically everything I'm going to say here.
Mm-hmm.
Where I will say there's a lot of important stuff in the first 40 minutes of The Matrix Reloaded. I think the first 40 minutes of this movie are kind of a disaster.
Oh, really?
I do. In terms of recontextualizing the audience of what the fuck these movies are going to be about. I think that, first movie ends with system failure, Neo turns into a god and flies away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a lot of, like rumors coming out about like what the fuck. I remember the hype for this. Like no one knew what the fuck this movie was going to be. There was all this talk about how they had to build their own fucking highway for that chase scene.
Oh, we're going to fucking get to that shit.
And there's a lot of that. Then so people are like, what the fuck is this movie going to be? And then the first 40 minutes, I think it's hard to tell if it's going to be more of the same or if we're in like a whole new world,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a bad job done at recontextualizing for the audience. I'm talking about if you want to make this movie accessible, right? Which is a different debate as opposed to the quality of the film. Because like I said, there's a lot of important, we'll get to like some very important scenes that happen in here. But yeah, there's a lot. Also, I think now we kind of have to talk about how this movie was supposed to be a springboard for The Matrix becoming this multimedia thing.
Which leads into Revolutions. I think we can hold off on that.
No, because a lot of what happens in this movie doesn't happen in this movie. It happened in, like, promotional materials.
Really? Okay, because there's a lot that happens in Revolutions where, like, Niobe, played by Jada Pinkett Smith, is like, I spoke to the Oracle, and she gives a rundown of what she spoke to the Oracle about. That happens in a video game.
Yes. Like, there's that. There's stuff that happens in between. The stuff with the kid is, like, I think in the Animatrix or in a comic or something like that. The scene where they're like, we're getting these messages, like where we found out the machines are digging, that was established in like a tie-in thing. There is so much going on that I didn't even fucking remember. Like I was looking up and it was like, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm sure it would have been thrilling if you had kept up. I think this is a movie that just, it's so weird because I think they kind of realized their mistake by the time of Revolutions, but we'll get to that. I think this is a movie that just assumed that The Matrix was so big, everyone would pay attention to every other thing,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake. And I think that has been a continued mistake with trying to make these franchises multimedia, you know?
I think it's a mistake for most things, and I think to like what these films end up doing is trying to like, oh well, you know, the Emperor spoke to us in Fortnite, and that explains the opening crawl to episode 9,
Yeah.
which is a frankly, like, how does everyone involved with that film still have a job? Anyways, I'm sorry, but like, it's
what a bonkers thing that now Fortnite is canon.
I know, but the point being, I don't think it's that bad of an idea. You can't have it run the system forever. You can't have the franchise run by that forever. I think if you have like, here's a trilogy of stuff or something like that, right? Or a series of like films for a couple years where this is all interconnected. I think you can do that. And I gotta be honest, because it came from the Wachowskis' own mind and vision, I kind of fuck with it.
I'm interested in it just because you can kind of feel like the Wachowskis are like, this is our fucking moment, you know?
Yeah, and like, something similar happened a couple years later to my beloved Southland Tales.
Hey.
Which is technically part 3 of 6 of a 6-part chapter, which was also released in promotional comic book materials.
Mm-hmm. Now that's, I gotta just say, that's just crazy.
Yeah, no, I've never read those other comics because they're like impossible to track down.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, like, but I love Southland Tales.
Who thought that?
I don't know.
You know what? He might have been the one guy that like saw these movies and was like, "Now is the moment.
Now like, is my time."
This is what the future of cinema should be. And like Southland Tales is like the natural extension of Matrix Revolutions.
It kind of is. It's also about questioning the systems that you live in.
I mean, it's like the dark doppelganger of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like welcome to the desert of the real. It's Los Angeles. Like
also Dwayne Johnson's best performance for some reason.
I know, yeah, totally. I would agree with that. But I'm saying like I kind of agree where, like, I would like someone to try this at some point, and I think in the age of the internet, it is, like, now is the time for someone to really go in on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, now is the time where you could do something where it's, like, to understand the story, you have to read a book, listen to a CD, fucking read a webcomic, fucking play a video game, watch a movie, watch a bunch of, like, mini short films that are being released in front of other films. Like, I think now is the time you could get away with it. But I think it would have to be like a weird mid-budget art project, you know?
Honestly,
like
I think an A24 film should do this.
Hey, I would maybe agree.
Yeah, that not to be like A24 stan or anything like that, but like because that's the kind of marketing those films tend to have anyways, you know? Where like The Green Knight had this incredible internet hype train behind it. And then people in the real world were like, what is The Green Knight?
But A24 is like the only like company, like film company right now that has like a following that isn't based on franchises.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like which is kind of nuts. So they could maybe get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree with that.
But Matrix Reloaded.
But, yeah, Matrix Reloaded. Yeah, I think the first 40 minutes. And I guess if I were to make like a big overarching point, like I'm the guy, like I get it. I'm the guy who comes in here. I like structure. I will, if a movie has big ideas but the structure is whack, I might not gel with the movie. So I'm definitely going to point out that I think there are some things structurally wrong. Not wrong, but just like off with these movies. And I think that there is a perfect version of the Matrix sequels that is 1 3-hour, maybe 3.5-hour long movie. I think there was a way that you could have told this story condensed. Now, because of the ideas that the Matrix sequels are tackling, there's kind of a part of you that is like, is some of this weird structural inconsistency intentional? And I'm normally not a guy that fucks with that, but I kind of fuck with it here, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of like, is some of the shit in in Matrix Reloaded supposed to be a little lame? Is that kind of what the movie's going for? And there's stuff in the Matrix Revolutions that makes me think that that is absolutely the case, and then there's stuff in the Matrix Revolutions that makes me think that was not the case. But regardless, you could make an argument that I would agree with, where you're like, it's supposed to kind of, where, you know, like how people make that argument where it's like the fucking prequels are supposed to be stuffy because the Jedi suck, you know, like, which is an argument you can make, but I don't think that makes the movies more interesting. Like, you could make a similar argument here, and I think it does make the movies more interesting. But we can get deeper into that.
Yeah, I would argue that case for these, for specifically Reloaded. A film that I think is like about, like, to get all numerical about it, I think it's 50% brilliant, 25% really interesting but doesn't really work, and 25% what happened.
Is how much of that 25% is the character of the kid?
You know what? No. The kid is fine for me.
The kid who everyone keeps saying is 16 years old, even though he clearly looks 35.
Yeah.
I got a problem.
This was the 2000s. We're coming off the Raimi Spider-Man. I buy it. But
no.
Here's what, like, the first moment that idea clicked for me was when they're going to see the Merovingian, and he's like explaining the way of control and how he kind of roofies someone.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting moment.
Oh, that's a way of phrasing it. And then he's like, all right, fuck off now. And then his wife, Monica Bellucci, you know, that horrendous looking woman,
man.
she's like, the dynamic between those two characters completely explains the dynamic of Reloaded, where these people are just pawns. They're not revolutionaries like they are, but not to the extent that they think they are. And they're just pawns in power struggles, because the Merovingian's wife, Mona Lisa, right? That's her name?
No. All right. I'm going to talk about this real quick.
Okay.
I'm going to jump to the Merovingian. I was going to save it, but we have to. So the Merovingian is like the most disgusting French man you've ever met.
Yeah, he's French.
Like, he's so awful. Like, I almost feel like you could claim racism against the French people with how the Merovingian is characterized. It'd be like if a fucking, like, I'd be pissed if, like, there was, like, we have to meet the Italian, and he said, he's like, I'm making the pizza, like... Like, that was his entire character. He was literally Super Mario or some shit.
Oh no, excuse me. Her name is Persephone. Why did I think it was?
Well, yeah,
Mona
that's
Lisa?
the thing. So the All right, here was something I forgot to ask you. I had it built up for like a week that this is the question I was going to start the episode with, and I forgot. At what age did you realize there were werewolves in this movie?
I missed that on my younger viewings. It was only recently when people were like, yeah, I love the offhand comment about there were werewolves and vampires. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. So, like, I also did not know that until a few years ago. And that's kind of like the moment where, like, suddenly the sequels clicked for me. But, like... It says a lot that I feel like if I was writing a Matrix sequel that had werewolves in it, I would lead with the fact that there are werewolves in it. I think that's very important for what this movie is. But, alright, so we got the Merovingian. He's basically like a Hades type character.
Yeah, and I need to go back after you're done to my point there, but go ahead.
Yeah, we'll totally go back to it. And I will talk about the parts that I agree with, too. So it's like, alright, so what's the Merovingian? Well, he's like a Hades type character. He rules like the digital equivalent of the underworld. And it's like, well, why isn't he called Hades? Oh, he's called the Merovingian because he's French. And it's kind of like a reference to this obscure French dynasty from, like, the fucking, like, you know, early time French history. And it's like, you know, we don't want to just come out there and say he's Hades. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's his wife's name? Persephone. Like, oh, okay. All right, so we get, like, really technical with the fucking Merovingian, but then his wife is just Persephone. Like, all right, I guess that's the Wachowskis, like, through and through.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, here's one thing that's needlessly complicated to distract you from the very obvious thing happening in the scene. Which I also think is part of what the movie is going for.
Yeah, and so there's that moment where she's like, fuck it, like, I'm tired of this guy, like just kind of like disrespecting me. I'll show you what you want to see, but I need Neo to kiss me. And boy, I bet Keanu Reeves had a terrible time making this movie, having to film a sex scene with, with Trinity, and then also make out with Monica Bellucci.
That scene is so weird.
I know, it's very strange. Even when I was younger, I was like, this feels like needlessly complicated.
It's one of these things where, like, when you watch it now, like, I can't really get upset with audiences for not jiving with the movie.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. But after that moment, she's like, all right, I believe you, right? After, like, being like, no, not good enough. Like, I didn't believe the love. And then she feels it again. She's like, all right, I'll... And she herself is power brokering, you know, in her own way. And then she shows them to, like, this place where they have the key maker. And then she shoots one of the henchmen. And then she's like, go tell my husband what I've done. And for years it bothered me that I was like, why the fuck would she do, like, why is she doing that? She's trying to help them. And I was like, oh, she doesn't give a shit about, like, what they're doing. You know? It's just her, like, it's just her power struggle with her husband. And so she's like...
It's not just that. That's, like, their weird, like, sexual dynamic. Like, you get that that's what their relationship is like, you know? That they kind of, they kind of get off on going back and forth at each other.
Yeah.
Which is some interpretations of the Hades Persephone thing, you know?
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, fuck. Like, that's the moment for me that made this all start working again. Because I like the first 40 minutes of the movie, mostly. I gotta be honest, Reloaded has, like, a bunch of moments where it just stops fucking dead.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of like, brick walls that come up, and it's not just the exposition. I think, unfortunately, the filmmaking takes a major step down. Where, like, every moment of the original Matrix, where I'm just like, holy fuck, every image is telling you, like, 1,000 different things.
Yeah, but here's something weird. So, like, this is what I couldn't figure out rewatching these. I totally agree with you on Reloaded. But you get to Revolutions, and it's suddenly like, oh shit, they're back. I think visually, Revolutions looks fucking incredible.
I think Revolutions is one of the best directed blockbusters I've ever seen in my entire life.
So, is it intentional here?
Maybe.
Like, is it... I think part of it is them kind of being like... It's almost like a fuck you to the audience, which is pretty daring. Especially if you're trying to launch a multimedia franchise to immediately go fuck you at the sequel. I think it's trying to be like, look, the hero's journey is kind of lame. It's the same shit over and over again. Like, and so when we make this movie, the fighting is going to be kind of lame. But there's some stuff, we'll get to it with Revolutions, but there's some stuff in Revolutions that makes me think that, because this was kind of a tortured production, you know? Like, you get the sense that they got, like, a blank check to do whatever they want, and then they kind of, even then they're the Wachowskis, so they got too fucking big with it, you know?
Yeah.
And you can feel like they maybe didn't know how to stuff all their ideas into one thing, and then once everything gets on rails, after all this setup is done in Reloaded, Revolutions works really well, you know? And so it's hard for me to fully tell, and even then it's one of these things where, like, I kind of would just like Reloaded to function better as a movie. That's just personally, you know.
No, I actually agree with you. Like, I don't need more structure, but I need, like, I need a better way to kind of, like, process all this, because all the ideas, I'm like, yeah, this is fucking brilliant. Maybe, you know, maybe don't just have people talking about it all the time. Like, you know, people, it's like the lame argument people have against the Star Wars prequels where they're like, it's just people talking in different rooms, and it's like, yeah, but, like, I feel like it could still come more alive, because the writing of, like, the characters I actually don't think is, like, the problem at all. I am pro Matrix Reloaded is what I'm getting at, but it is the most frustrating movie.
I want to make it clear, like, when I said I think the first 40 minutes are a disaster, that I clearly draw the line at 40 minutes.
Okay.
Like after that is when the movie kind of really starts clicking.
Okay, see,
But it's one of
I
these
still
things where,
think it's a
like,
little frustrating from time to time.
it's frustrating, and then I will say I think like after that 40 minutes, it's a slow ramp upwards, but it is continually upwards. You know?
Yeah, it doesn't. It literally doesn't climax.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a big problem. I think the other thing is that, like, especially in the first 40 minutes, a lot of it is dedicated to setting up a bunch of guns that don't go off, you know?
Mm-hmm. Which is maybe why Revolutions is so fucking great. I mean, can we just say Revolutions is great? I think it's a great
Revolution
movie.
is great, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, you know? And but I will say, like, I can't tell, like, how much it stands on its own, because I did just watch these two together. I always kind of rate Reload and Revolutions together.
That's fair.
So, like, whereas, like, I think Revolutions elevates Reloaded, and I think Reloaded kind of drags down Revolutions a little bit. But they're still great. Like, it's one of those things where I still fucking love these movies.
Yeah, like, honestly, I wanted to come out swinging, like, wholeheartedly, like, no, Reloaded's fucking a masterpiece, too. And I really don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Revolutions, I will argue that, though, yes.
I was so sad when I started this, and I was like, I really think the first 40 minutes are bad. Like, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but, like, I really don't like it. In terms of the filmmaking, really, like, I think there's a lot of, like, fucking weird trip-ups there. And I was really worried I was going to come on here and have to be the asshole that's like, actually, it sucks. And I was like, man, I remember liking this the last time I watched it. But then, like I said, like, after that, it gets really good. And like I said, if I go back to my argument that I think there's a good, like, 3-hour version of these two movies put together, like, if I were to make, like, some structural changes, I would have started the movie, kept it in the Matrix, run through all that stuff without really leaving the Matrix, maybe going under the Nebuchadnezzar every now and then, going to the source, meeting the architect, then do all the Zion stuff in the middle, and then go back to the big Agent Smith fight. I think, like, I'm not saying that's perfect, but, like, I think it would have worked a little better.
Okay.
Whereas I just think the Zion stuff is so much of it here is just, like, set up for another movie that we aren't going to see, you know? Especially, I mean, like, here's the thing, came out the same year. It's not like the Marvel thing where you have to wait, like, years sometimes, but a little frustrating. Also, I guess here's the thing. So I talk about, like, how we kind of have to recontextualize what's going on with the movie. The one thing we kind of get at the beginning is Neo is having the dream about Trinity dying, right? We get that action scene, which I'm not sure is the best action scene to start the movie off with, but it's kind of just like generic, here's what you want Matrix scene, which again could totally be by design.
Yeah, you think it is, and then it ends with Trinity dying, and then Neo wakes up, so that hangs over the picture, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I want to agree with you, but then I'm like, no, you kind of need that there.
Yeah. And then it's also like Neo's now having these dreams. He's kind of seeing into the future a little bit. It's also the beginning of him kind of like being connected to the Matrix without being jacked in, you know, which is a big part of Revolutions. Then we go to, like, a big long talking scene inside the Matrix where a bunch of people just meet and they stand around for a long time. And we're suddenly thrown a lot of new information, right? And I feel like a lot of this could have been told visually a little better. Where suddenly we're introduced to Niobe. She's a new character. Also, there's, like, a weird line later where, like, Neo is like, what's the deal with Morpheus and Niobe? And I'm like, how have you guys not had this conversation? That kind of just felt a little sloppy.
Stuff like that keeps happening in this movie, and I was like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And again, like, it's one of these weird things where, like, there's an argument to be made that it's entirely on purpose.
I know, that's what's, like, really weird about this
I guess that's weird, because I'm going to talk about a lot of sloppy stuff in the movie. I don't want to, just to stop myself from repeating myself, I want to say pretty much all of it, I think, could be intentional. But I'm still going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then there's, like, the whole thing where it's like the machines are digging, they're bringing an army, blah blah, which is, it's a weird, like, I feel like they could have just shown us the machines digging and then cut to this scene, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just to give us, I don't know, like, there's a weird lack of visual grounding in the beginning of this movie. And at the same time, and then on top of that, where Morpheus is like, well, they're doing this because we have freed more people in the last few months, blah, blah, blah. And then part of me wants to be like, I want to see what the Matrix is looking like now. Like, what, like, our real world. Like, let's say our real world is actually the Matrix, and then suddenly, like, the revolutions are happening behind the scenes, but we're kind of unaware of it. How does that start warping our reality, you know?
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted a scene in it where it's like, this will sound weird, but I kind of wanted to see what the Matrix looked like, and I kind of assumed it would just look like kind of how the world looks right now. Where it's like, there's this big wave coming, and we don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, the weird, just like, shit doesn't feel right. And we all are kind of vaguely aware of it. And we know there's a massive paradigm shift coming, but we can't see the moving parts of it enough. And we all have our own theories, and like, suddenly conspiracy theories are back, and like, there's all this crazy, like, weird new spiritualism that's back. I kind of wanted a weird, like, just like a 2-minute scene that kind of established that, right? Like a world out of control. And maybe that would have been something hard to get away with in post 9/11. You know,
mm-hmm.
to be like, the world is chaos, and then, but also kind of be like, actually, this chaos is kind of good, you know? I just think like something like simple like that would have helped a little bit. Especially then when Neo takes off after this scene and like flies around the world and like can like move storms around, you know? Which is just crazy visual.
Yeah, because like when the visuals take off, they're literally groundbreaking. They're still parodied. Less so than the first one, I would argue, but like the Matrix and Multi-Smith's fight, like that made waves, like in a big way. The architect scene made fucking MTV parodies and shit. But before we get into all that too, I also think that maybe that's why the film doesn't play with like the visual flourishes as much anymore. It's like, okay, they had their own, like, when they woke up Neo, when they woke up the One, it was themselves freeing their mind in a way. Okay. And when they're back with, like, the rest of the revolution, they still have to adhere to certain rules and order. And maybe that's why it's filmed, like, so stagnantly often, you know?
Yeah. I get that, but also we're about to go to Zion where there's, like, 6 scenes in a row exactly like that.
Yes. Which I think that is also like an extension of my argument for that. And again, that doesn't mean it all works better. I definitely think it is purposeful now, though.
I think it is nice, though, that we get to kind of see in these scenes that like a lot of people look at Morpheus like he's crazy.
Yeah, because we talked about that like last time. And it was like, yeah, he's kind of like a weeb. Like an anime weeb.
A little bit, yeah.
And he's like talking about like, you know, while you went out and partied in Zion, I studied the blade.
I studied the blade.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, dude. Actually, you know what? No, that's not true because Morpheus leads the parade to the orgy later.
A parade?
Yeah.
The parade to the orgy. Have floats, orgy floats.
I guess there's discourse about the orgy being an orgy or not. And it's like, I don't know. A bunch of people are clearly having sex with each other. It's about as much as an
orgy you're going to get away with in a big blockbuster movie in the early 2000s.
Yes. And if I can, I would like to bring up some comments that...
Oh, shit. You know what? I forgot a very important cultural moment, and I can't remember when it happened.
Okay, just say it, and I'll talk about Bill Pope.
When did Janet Jackson have her Super Bowl moment? 2004. All right, okay. So a year later.
Yeah.
That leads to this weird, like, return to Puritanism that happened, like, post that.
Yeah, and now we have discourse a couple years, like, 2 decades later about, should Spider-Man have a sex scene? And it's like, if Peter Parker wants to fuck, then yeah, I don't know. Like, why are you talking about that? Anyways, not the point of my takes. Bill Pope had some maybe insight into the production troubles of this film, where he was very vocally pro the Wachowskis at the end of this, but you mentioned like working on Bound was like such a rejuvenating creative experience, because he had shot, you know, like Army of Darkness, and Dino De Laurentiis, who had produced Bound, did not want Bill Pope. So when the Wachowskis were like, well, yeah, we want to work with this guy, and he was like, what? There are gorgeous women in this film. Why he shoots skeletons? Why you want him? You know? And it's like,
nobody cry when the skeleton goes.
And
goodbye, Judy Foster.
Yeah, that's our fucking boy.
I can do that because I'm Italian.
Oh, okay. It was offensive when I did.
All right, if the Merovingia was just Dilo De Laurentiis.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, hey. To meet the Italian film producer.
Yeah. So the Wachowskis work with Bill Pope on Bound and The Matrix, and The Matrix, they were able to just kind of completely stand their ground against the old studio system, and even to this day, Pope commended them for like being like really inspirational and like aggressive when they needed to be on that film, and he said that they were like, you know, like this total just creative force that he really aspired to, and that on the sequels they maybe read some filmmaking books that they weren't maybe too helpful to the actual filmmaking process. Like I believe some Stanley Kubrick book that they read about, like, you know, actors only really give a real performance by the 90th take or some shit. And Bill Pope said, and I quote, "I want to dig up Stanley Kubrick, bring him back to life, and kill him again." Because he did not have fun on the production of the sequels, and said he had a very mixed relationship to them, and that some stuff he felt went in the direction that they needed to go the opposite direction towards or from, and that looking over the recent 4K transfers with the Wachowskis, and he wrote after watching both Reloaded and Revolutions, he noted that, like, God, like just the way that they made those films, it feels like a different world basically, and that now that the producers had seen what The Matrix was, they were like, well, you got to do this and this and this, you know. And even though they stood their ground still on them, there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and
you definitely get that.
Yeah, sense, and it made the process itself, regardless of our fanaticism of the sequels, like it made the process like just grueling and exhausting for everyone involved. And but after watching the sequels again, he wrote the sisters Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss to tell them that, like, you know what, we did a good job and we should be proud. But he wouldn't want to do that again. So, you know. But yeah, it sounds like it was really fucking tough. You can listen to his full conversation with the Team Deacons podcast, my favorite that I liked and referenced on here. So go check it out. It is it's pretty good.
I should maybe start listening to that podcast.
Oh, every episode is like a master class, honestly.
Yeah, I'll start listening to it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I'm always worried I'm going to get invested in a podcast, and then like episode 99, the interview is going to be like, and this is why COVID is a hoax.
No, thankfully like, that doesn't happen.
No. Hey, you know what like made me kind of realize how torturous this must have been? Looking at just how much practical shit was actually in this movie, which you don't really think about a lot. that fucking that ship crashing through the gates of Zion in Matrix Revolutions was a practical ship crashing through. Like a model the size of fucking my bedroom. Just crashing into a gate. Did they hook up to like an amusement park track to like get it to run fast enough? Like that it just looked it like the behind the scenes stuff for this just looks torturous, you know? And I feel like it was one of these things where everyone was like, this will all be worth it because the Matrix is so huge right now. It's fucking gonna be a slam dunk, you know?
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if the studio is the one that's like, we can package a trilogy. Like, we can't package a sequel, we can package a trilogy. And the Wachowskis were like, well, we have an idea for a sequel. But we can... And then they kind of stretched it across 2 films. You know? because there's no way a studio's not gonna, not make 2 movies where they can make twice the amount of money, which isn't what happened, but that's what they probably thought was going to happen.
Yeah. Hey, Reloaded was the highest grossing R-rated film until Deadpool. So it partially worked.
But the drop between Reload and Revolutions is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Everyone made money. Ultimately, it wasn't like a flop, but it was one of those, like, they didn't get the double dip like they hoped they would.
Yeah, and I got to shout out again the Actions for Everyone podcast. Liam O'Donnell referenced this, like, again, he was one of the guys who was kind of banging the drum of the Matrix sequels for, like basically since they came out. But I kind of agree with him that if they had waited a year at least instead of 6 months to get that third one out, and like kind of sprinkled in all like the extracurricular activities and the promotional materials like through that, in the run-up to Revolutions, I think they make more money, frankly.
I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think the ending of Reloaded is, like, the worst note you could end this movie on. And I don't mean, like, the story. I just mean, like, the shot is, like, the worst shot to end this movie on.
It doesn't inspire a lot of excitement, but that fucking credit song does.
Well, yeah, but it's Rage Against the Machine. I mean. But I think, like, if there was something that made people be like, you know what, fuck this, and then I think it made people be like, I'm gonna be cautious about the next movie. And then when a lot of people came out of it being like, I don't know, man, not my thing. Like, I think it turned enough people off. Yeah, whatever. All right, a scene that, like, all right, I'm gonna do the thing you really shouldn't do, but I'm gonna give my notes on, like, what I would have done.
No,
if I had written this movie.
Okay, Patrick Willems.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Like,
no, I like him, but his Matrix video I disagree with.
He's got some ideas, but, like, I wouldn't want to see that movie either. But if I were to change, first of all, if I were to change anything, I would fuck the movie up. I don't want to act like I don't realize that. Okay. And here's the other thing: I would keep you around when I'm pitching these ideas because you would have enough to tell me when the idea was bad.
Okay.
So, there's the scene. I don't know if I would have introduced the Smith stuff this early, but that's a whole other discussion. When the agents show up, right? And Neo can sense that the agents are there. I think that fight is really lame, right? And they're like, I do like their dialogue where they're like, the anomaly, do we proceed? Of course, still only human. Like, that stuff's great.
Yeah.
I think the fight kind of sucks.
Hey, but that is action movie legend Daniel Bernhardt as Agent Johnson. Who is not a legend, but, like, he should be, because he's in fucking, like, some of the best shit ever.
What was I just talking about him? Like,
he's in Birds of Prey, even.
Didn't we just talk about Daniel Bernhardt, though, for some reason?
I don't know, but he rocks. He's in a bunch of great shit. He's in John Wick. He's in Birds of Prey.
He's back in Matrix Resurrections. He's back in Resurrections, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, he's fun. I mean, I think the agents are fun. I do like that the big bads of the first movie are kind of, like, relegated to, like, supporting bad guys. I love that. Like, I always think that's kind of cool. What I kind of wish would happen is, like, they're like, they have upgrades so they can kind of anticipate his moves a little bit. I would like if Neo, like, fought with him for a little bit, and then you kind of realize Neo's just biding his time to, like, let everyone get away, And the moment he knows everyone gets away, he just kind of, like, flicks his hand, and, like, the agents just go flying out of the building, Like, he's a god at that point. Like, he's just, like, at this point, he's just toying with agents. I think that visually would have communicated things a little better. No, doesn't change the scene that much. I kind of want, that scene in Revenge of the Sith when Yoda walks into the Palpatine's office and the two guards, like, get ready and Yoda just kind of waves his hand and they both fall over. I kind of want that scene.
Okay. But with the agents.
Yeah, because I want people... I feel like the movie kind of needs to remind people that Neo's a god at this point, I think that's something that they kind of do on Zion, where he's like a messiah figure, but I want it to be very clear, like, in the Matrix, he is fucking God. And that's why they're doing so well. Whereas this, it's like, it's weird that, like, he's still kind of doing the basic action shit here. And at the same time, I think if he had done that here, it would make the later fight with the millions of Smiths and then with the Merovingians weirdos a little better. But we'll get to that, you know.
I want to go back to the Neo Messiah stuff also, but go ahead and run down your points.
No, I already did my point.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was it. Okay. Well, I'm obsessed with this idea of, like, adapting Jesus Christ into a long form narrative, not as like a fantastical religious text, but kind of the Paul Verhoeven idea of, like, yeah, that was a dude that existed. We should probably talk about him as a revolutionary figure, because that's what he was ultimately, right? And like,
well, that's Last Temptation of Christ too.
Oh yeah, that fucking hell yeah, top 5 Scorsese probably.
Money changers be gone.
And the idea that like so many of the religious films about Jesus are like, oh, he was a man, that's why he was great, but also he carries himself with like a divinity, and like also he's better than mankind. It's like, whoa, no, that's not the power of the story of like a savior, you know? That them being a savior is they help people save themselves and stuff like that. And also, if he was a man, then he has human urges like sex and hunger and such. And I just really like that Neo and Trinity, like when they get back to Zion, they're like, oh, fucking finally, like we have like moments to ourselves so we can fuck. Because it's like a normal thing to like desire with a partner. That's a totally healthy, normal thing. And the moment they get some time to themselves, the doors open and it's like, oh yeah, people believe you're like God, so you have to. They need you right now. I can wait. And Neo's like, fuck, like God damn it. And I don't know. I just really like that. It provides a real like human essence to a narrative that could just be the opposite of human.
Well, to bring it back, it reminds me of, you know, to bring it back to Last Temptation of Christ, when Scorsese did that, people literally burned down theaters.
Yeah.
Like, it caused riots when he portrayed Jesus that way. Mm-hmm. So, oh god, what is the fucking Kurt Vonnegut, like, Kilgore Trout Jesus thing?
I don't know, actually.
I gotta look up this quote.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to read this. You can cut it if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But what you were talking about kind of reminded me of the Gospel from Outer Space by Kilgore Trout, which is from a Kurt Vonnegut novel. And here's the long quote about it's from Slaughterhouse-Five, where an alien kind of rewrites the Bible. And it says, it was the Gospel from Outer Space by Kilgore Trout. It was about a visitor from outer space who made a serious study of Christianity to learn, if he could, why Christians found it so easy to be cruel. He concluded that at least part of the trouble was the slipshod storytelling in the New Testament. He supposed the intent of the Gospels was to teach people, among other things, to be merciful, even to the lowest of the low. But the Gospels actually taught this: before you kill somebody, make absolutely sure he isn't well connected. So it goes. The flaw in the Christ story, said the visitor from outer space, was that Christ, who didn't look like much, was actually the son of the most powerful being in the universe. Readers understood this, so when they came to the crucifixion, they naturally thought, oh boy, they sure picked the wrong guy to lynch that time. And that thought had a brother. There are right people to lynch. Who? People not well connected. So it goes. The visitor from outer space made a gift to Earth of a new gospel. In it, Jesus really was a nobody, and a pain in the neck to a lot of people with better connections than he had. He still got to say all the lovely and puzzling things he said in the other gospels, so the people amused themselves one day by nailing him to a cross and planting the cross in the ground. There couldn't possibly be any repercussions, the lynchers thought. The readers would have to think that too, since the Gospels hammered home again and again what a nobody Jesus was. And then, just before the nobody died, the heavens opened up, and there was thunder and lightning. The voice of God came crashing down. He told the people he was adopting the bum as his son, giving him the full powers and privileges of the son of the creator of the universe throughout all eternity. God said this: from this moment on, he will punish anybody who torments a bum who has no connections.
I should read that, huh?
Oh, yeah, Vonnegut's fun. I don't know if, like, going back to Vonnegut now would be as impactful as it was in high school. I've had people say that Vonnegut is like the lefty Ayn Rand.
Oh.
And not that he, like, promotes libertarianism or anything, just that, like, there's kind of like a wishfulness to his writing, you know?
A wishfulness and maybe shallowness.
Yeah.
All right.
And there's definitely, like, even at the time, I remember there were parts in, I think it's Slaughterhouse-5 where there was a race riot at some point, and it's, like, very brief, but there's some comments where it's like, oh, Vonnegut didn't really understand what's going on here. You know, and not like in a like very like vicious or cruel way, just kind of like, oh, you know, he was a white guy of his time, you know. But yeah, his stuff was very impactful when I was in high school. So I can't believe you've never read Slaughterhouse-5.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro almost directed the movie adaptation of that, written by Charlie Kaufman.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and apparently they couldn't crack the script.
Yeah, how can you?
Yeah. But I got a lot of respect for them for that, where they're like, yeah, we can't really crack this, so let's just drop it.
I will say that there's something to that where you're like, you're not arrogant enough to think, you know what, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
Although they did a Slaughterhouse-5 movie that was like fine.
Okay.
In like the 70s, but like again, like it's kind of like you can't, like the book is just its own thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's someone to really crack it, it would have been Kaufman, but I guess not. So yeah, read Slaughterhouse-5. People.
Charlie Kaufman's The Matrix Reloaded.
Hey now.
I think maybe I would be interested in the world where they were like, hey, could you take a look at this for us before we go to directing it? Just your thoughts.
I don't know if I want to meet Charlie Kaufman.
No, I don't want to meet Charlie. Have you seen, I think I've talked about it before, but the interview with Kermode and Mayo with Charlie Kaufman and the dude who co-directed Anomalisa?
No, I have not.
It is the most uncomfortable interview I might have ever seen in my life. It's a pair of artists who feel like they've discovered like a creative atom bomb without realizing that they're using a microwave.
Well then.
It's yeah. Yeah. It's bad.
You kind of get that vibe a little bit from the works, you know?
Yeah, and I'm a fan of the works.
I like Charlie Kaufman's stuff, but yeah. Strange guy. You know he worked on the Dana Carvey show?
Oh, really?
Yeah. They could not get him for an interview for that documentary about the Dana Carvey show, though. So I have no idea what he actually wrote. Wonder if he wrote Grandma the Clown, which is just an old lady who's very sad about being old, but she's dressed as a clown.
Yeah, that sounds like a Charlie Kaufman thing.
All right. Where were we? Oh, Neo tries to find the Oracle, but like she's not there. That's a scene that happens. I guess we should just go to Zion already.
Yeah, let's do it, because I really like the conversation between Neo and the council member.
Well, here's the thing. I'll say this: I like that conversation. B, it is one of the most important parts of the movie. C, it's kind of fucking boring. It's kind of weird. It's just like, let's just stop for fucking like 5 minutes and talk about these things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, if the movie had maybe started on a better foot, I think you'd be more forgiving of a scene like this. But nothing interesting has happened. There's just a lot of this in the front, you know?
Yeah, I guess, but like I'm so into the conversation. Like this is one of the moments that should stop it dead in its tracks, but I really like it.
Mm-hmm. But it also does stop the movie dead in its tracks. Like, I like it, but it does do that.
Kind of, but like I'm just so into it, like, because it's the whole conflict of the revolution, you know, where it's like, you know, we escape these machines and we're trying to free people from these machines, but these machines are the ones we rely on to survive because of machines we created up above, and it's like, it's just this endless paradox of like their struggle.
And like I said, I just think that, like, if you're a general audience, it's going to be a frustrating moment. You know?
Oh, no. This film is definitely frustrating, and we'll continue down that path. But, like, you don't hear conversations like that in movies that cost $150 million.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like it. It's just... But it's also, like, you got to remember, this is after, like, scenes of, like, we're getting introduced to all these new characters in Zion who will not matter to the story of this film at all.
Yeah.
You know? Like, they're all just being set up for this battle that's going to come later. And it's weird because the battle doesn't happen in this movie, there's never really any tension from the machines digging to Zion, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where it's like, that should be a really big threat. I think it says something that one of the better calls made by the Lord of the Rings films is that, like, they don't show the army marching to, like, Gondor in two towers or anything, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we see the beginnings of the battle and the ends of it, you know? Whereas this one, it's like, these machines, this is going to be a problem. And everyone's kind of, like, other than that one guy, it's like, people seem a lot calmer than you'd think.
Yeah, and that's an interesting character. I believe you're referring to the security commander, right?
Yeah, Link, is that it? No, Locke.
Commander Locke, played by Harry Lennox. Henry Lennox? I thought it was Henry Lennox. Have I been getting his name wrong this whole fucking time?
Linux operating system?
No. Anyways, I imagine Zack Snyder's a fan of these films because he cast him as in a similar capacity in Man of Steel.
And his role in the film is that he sucks.
He sucks, but also I think there's like a fervently militant approach that the Wachowskis are like kind of rallying against, where he's like, we need everyone to like sacrifice, and then Morpheus is like, no, we don't. And even the one council member guy is like, you know, like, have a little faith in your fellow man.
Well, there's all these different faces of like what a revolution can be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it going to be, like, sacrificing all our lives for a better tomorrow? Is it going to be, like, wiping out our enemies? Like, we're kind of getting a lot of that. And that goes into a lot of what the councilman's speech is like, well, what is freedom? What is peace? What is control? Like, it's not really, you know, peace or freedom if you just, like, subjugate someone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, which it's like we're always kind of tied. We always have this connection. And but he just comes in and he just makes every wrong call, you know?
Yeah.
And it's that thing of, like, again, to bring that to the Lord of the Rings movies were like, you know, I love the Ents in Lord of the Rings, but they're, like, written to be annoying and boring, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't really blame audiences when they come away finding them annoying and boring. And this guy, his whole thing is that he just kind of sucks. And also it's something of, like, he's like, we need every ship, and it's like, what will that change? And it's like, wait, even with every ship, it won't matter. And then it's like, well, then what the fuck are we talking about? Yeah. Like, and I do think there's kind of a funny thing where, like, he's a militant guy, but, like, the unspoken thing is that he's never fought in a war. Like, there's never been a battle. Like, which is kind of funny.
Well, I don't know. Okay, we can get into that because the time periods are a little shaky, intentionally so, and I think this is one of the strokes of pure and utter genius that this film has. But let's stick to the commander right now, because he's probably fought like machines at some point, but there's no like arena for a battle because they just kind of escape. They're insurgents, they're revolutionaries, so he would just like burrow back underground. It's like guerrilla warfare for them. Mm-hmm. There's no Helm's Deep until Revolutions. You know, they've never seen anything like that before. And to be fair, our audience hadn't seen anything like that before either. Like, on that scale, I would argue. Like Lord of the Rings, kind of. And I would argue, actually, as much as I love Revolutions, that Lord of the Rings has better battle sequences. But like with the technology at the Wachowskis' disposal, like the movement of the machines and the lighting and like the frames and the choreography, it's still like wowed me. I was like, oh fuck yeah, movies can look like this with the right effort behind them.
No, the battle I think looks fucking great.
Yeah.
Like the Wachowskis are underrated as like battle directors.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Which I think is different than action directing. Like and they did a great job, and they've never really gotten a chance to do that at all again.
Yeah, and like the ship has sailed, but fuck, we totally missed out on a world where they do Star Wars.
I guess, yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows where things are going?
All right, but the point I wanted to make, and we kind of do have to jump around with this because Reloaded is just that type of film. But
here's why we would be bad for the Revolution. The only thing we can think of is attaching the Wachowskis to other projects.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, I had...
This is why we're not getting unplugged from that Matrix.
I guess so, but...
Like, they're not even bothering
Before I go
us.
into my huge rant about, like, the frailty and fakeness of the revolution that's guided by the architect, it does suck that one of my thoughts at the Neo action stuff, I was like, fuck, they probably could have nailed Superman. And I still stand by that, but I'm also like glad that didn't happen.
Not to be like these directors should have they should have done XYZ intellectual property. But my big takeaway from this is then like, man, everyone should have just learned the lessons this movie taught, and when they started making more franchises, you know,
kind of, yeah.
Like this gives us a great blueprint, and then they just didn't do it.
I know. All right. So the architect, when Neo meets with him, discovers that the one is not really the one. He is one of many ones, which makes him...
Wait, are we skipping to the architect?
I have to talk about this now because this is relevant to the Commander Locke stuff.
I forgot to talk about, though, how the whole speech about machines and what is control literally ends with the guy going, like, I have no point.
Yeah.
Which I'm just saying, like, if you're an audience member, you're like, fuck this.
But that is kind of also the point of the movie, where it's like, just think about these things a little more.
You mind if I want to save the architect. Can we come back to it when we, like, because we can talk about the battle a little more there, because then, like, we immediately jump into Revolutions.
Okay, because I'm about to fucking, like, unload.
All right, yeah, we'll save it for that. I wrote down awkward group orgy scene.
No, you know what? I think the Wachowskis are brilliant at developing action protagonists and worlds because they give you an understanding of what these people are fighting for.
No, it's good stuff. I'm just saying that if you're gonna have an orgy scene in a movie, you might want to give the audience a heads up.
I'm cool with that, but I really think it's a beautiful scene where like these crowds of people are like living life to the fullest.
Being invited to an orgy is fine, but walking in on an orgy always feels awkward. I just gotta throw that out there.
All right.
But no, but it's like actually like a very important scene.
Yeah,
so, because it is their way of like showing like the collective kind of like organism, you know, of Zion and its people. But also we see that like Trinity and Neo are kind of off by themselves, which is kind of like setting up like quote unquote the flaw, you know, like that they like the difference here is like the one has been designed to like have empathy with all humanity, and that's what kind of keeps the control going. But this time he's fallen in love with one specific person, and they very much are acting apart from the group orgy scene, and that's basically what the climax of the movie is going to be. And the problem is that, like, again, like the audience is just fucking checking out the moment the orgy's starting. Like,
well, here's the thing, I love the scene. Like many scenes in Matrix Reloaded, it goes on a little long.
It goes on way long. There's a lot of scenes in this that you're like, holy shit, this is still happening.
Yeah.
Like,
even like the fucking breathtaking highway scene. I'm like, okay, if you're going to make any scene in the movie too long, that's probably the one to do it. But it is a little long. And I started to get concerned. Like, fuck, I haven't seen Revolutions like all the way through in like 10 years. Is this going to bum me out? And no, that
Yeah.
didn't happen for Revolutions, just to be clear. I was a little bummed to walk away from Reloaded as much as I liked it, to be like, yeah, you probably could have tightened that up a lot.
I think there maybe was just like they were like, no, this is not a rave, this is an orgy. Like, I think they just, because like it starts out and you kind of be like, okay, they're kind of doing like some spiritual dancing, and then it just keeps going, and it's like, wow, they're really getting into it. And then, it's like, oh, okay. Like, there's a moment with that where it shifts a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
9-year-old me could not tell what the fuck was going on.
No, I was like, oh, they're all dancing, and then cut to Neo and Trinity having sex, and I was like, oh,
yeah, everyone's having a party. They're making out real hard.
Oh, they're really getting into it.
They're really, you're really trying to be thorough.
Covering all the nooks and crannies.
Oh yeah. You already covered Neo and Trinity making out, which is a great scene. Then they get the message from the Oracle, and they have to go back into the Matrix. And that's exactly where I wrote like the 40-minute mark. Like, and this is all right. So I'm probably gonna have mostly positive things to say going forward now.
Okay.
So I got all the like kind of being a dick about it out of the way. So we immediately go to, so they got to meet with the Oracle. We get the Seraph scene, which I almost wish the movie had just fucking started here, honestly.
Okay.
Like, I think the movie could have just fucking started here. Because Neo walks into the room and, like, he's getting a different energy from him, which is, like, again, it's visual. He doesn't, like, say anything. And then they get into a fucking cool fight. And then you're, like, part of you is, like, I have watched this scene with people, and people get to the end of it, and they're like, what was that about? And I'm like, no, it's very, like, this guy is, like, a protector. He's basically testing Neo to see if he's the one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, I had to test you, and I had to fight you. That's the only way I know how to communicate. Like...
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, too.
It also makes sense when you start treating, like, he's, like, literally a program. He's a security program, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's like a password screen, you know? Like, you got to hit the right numbers in, and, like, the way the Neo does that is by kicking.
Yeah, you got a lock screen on your phone? That's Seraph.
Yeah, you got to fight fucking Seraph, man.
You putting in your password? That's him testing you.
So, I love that scene. Like, that's a great scene. I think some people feel like it's pointless. And then we immediately go from that. He opens the door, and then we get the idea of the, you know, the back doors, which is a real thing in computers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's back doors in tons of systems.
Yeah, and we're already seeing, like, the evolution of technology starting to influence the writing of the series and, like, the story directions, which I just found, like, so interesting.
But also what it's really doing, which is really important, is that it's growing the world of the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Which is what needs to happen. It's happening 40 minutes into this movie, but it is happening. And then we go to the scene with the Oracle, which I really like. It's sadly the last scene with the Oracle's original actress, Gloria Foster.
Yeah, shout out to her, who's so incredible in the role, and unfortunately passed between the shooting of Reloaded and Revolutions.
Mm-hmm. And this is like, again, where she kind of gives some much needed, like, this is exposition. I just feel like it's her performance. She's like got like such a warm presence to her, you know,
mm-hmm.
that like it really it helps kind of make the scene work. And I love Neo's like I'm not like gonna sit, and like she's like, all right, and then she just waits. And then he's like, I felt like sitting. Like I just love. It's like one of the few moments that Neo kind of gets like his personality reinformed, you know. Mm-hmm. And she kind of gives like some very like basic stuff where she's like, "Look, we're programs. You see programs all the time. They're angels. They're UFOs. They're stuff like that." And it's like those are programs behaving, which is establishing the stuff we're going to get into with the Merovingian, right?
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, and the path of the wand ends at the machine mainframe." The door of light. Like, it's all just like, here's the very like point A, point B, point C, like here's where the plot's going, which gives the movie, I think, a better narrative thrust than what we've been dealing with for 40 minutes. Did you notice that her candy is red?
I did.
Pills?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Like the red pill. Ha 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 ha.
Or do you want to talk about the nature of choice?
I think another reason why a film like Matrix Reloaded is so frustrating is for the general audience. It's not why I think you and I find it frustrating. I think you and I are like on board with these ideas. Mm-hmm. It's a film about how choice is a lie, basically. Freedom is at least a lie. And I think choice can be misconstrued and we can be misinformed on the choices we make because of powerful institutions and people who kind of leave a lot of our lives out of our hands, and that you think you're making a choice, but really that choice was made for you a long time ago, and it was kind of the only choice you had. Mm-hmm. Anyways, this movie's about how free will is itself a construct.
Yes. But also, it's like we're dealing with the debate of free will, which is something that has been a debate for centuries. And it's like, all right, we're just going to slow down this blockbuster to deal with it. You know? Mm-hmm. Which if we still don't really have an answer on free will in reality, mm-hmm. It's kind of ballsy for a movie to be like, all right, but we're going to tackle it. Which was what I kind of enjoy about it.
Yeah, like even now I still see people like dunking on this film on film Twitter. Not that it's undunkable by any means, but people like, oh, it stops dead in its tracks to explain like philosophy stuff, and it's like, no, I like all that. I wish it handled it better, but I also love these conversations. Yes. So like, wrong battle to fight, frankly, in my opinion, for these. We should also talk about Agent Smith, I guess.
Do you think free will exists?
I think if we choose...
Answer me, you coward.
I think if we choose to believe it exists.
Oh, sure.
That's not a non-answer.
Sure, buddy. That was a good time to talk about Agent Smith. I'm the Smith to your Neo. I will say, like... you get a big moment of me when I kind of checked out of the new atheist movement was when atheists started talking about biological determinism and how there's no free will because our minds just like already decide these things, and that there's no real freedom and choice, because they weren't saying it in like any sort of revelatory way. They were kind of saying it in a like, and that's why we shouldn't fight the system kind of way. Mm-hmm. They were kind of saying it in a way that Agent Smith talks about. All right, Agent Smith showing up at this moment. How do you feel about it?
I like it way more now than I ever did before. It's still not perfect, but I think his reintroduction after Neil's like, okay, I know the path I'm on now. It's all clear to me. Oh, whoa, Ed, what? I think that is...
his whole speech is great, though.
Oh, he's fucking great, and I brought it up. Sophie from Mars's video on the Matrix sequels, and also
I didn't want to watch other people's stuff. You recommended a lot to me, and I didn't want to watch other people's stuff.
No, it's totally fair. Her approach, along with I also should give credit to Sarah Zedig, who assisted with that video, and it cuts between both of them, elaborating their points, and it's this wonderful thesis about the sequels. And there's a moment in the film that's left in where you see the camera and light reflection on Agent Smith's glasses on one side, and the other side is Neo. Did you catch that?
No, I did not.
They go on to elaborate on a whole other like theory about the films themselves being about audience's perception to like the chosen one narratives.
Oh, yeah,
and about free will, and how, like, if someone's always watching you, like, is that going to guide your own choices? And it's fucking great. Just go watch it. I'm not going to elaborate all the way through their own points.
That's the thing. Like, I made the point the other one, but we're the wrong two idiots to talk about the deeper philosophical implications of the film. But there's a lot of great stuff out there to find.
Yeah, I took one philosophy class in college, so.
I took philosophy in high school, and I failed.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize the more I'm talking to other people from other parts of the world and country, that my high school might have done me a little dirty, because of they're like, oh yeah, I read this. Everyone read Slaughterhouse 5. I didn't read Slaughterhouse 5. What happened?
I will say, you know what? I think I've told this story, but like, I was a bad student, and I wasn't allowed to like. There was weird rules about like what books you could read in certain classes based on like your grade percentage, and only straight A students were allowed to read certain books. And like out of spite, I would always read them, even though it mattered nothing to my grade. Like. Just to like, so like I ended up reading like a lot of great works of literature, because the stuff they would fucking make you read when they think you're a dunce is like the weird like young adult like version of something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like those books suck. I'm glad I never really had a young adult phase, you know? Like I know a lot of people, like, God bless them, that like gave them their love of reading and stuff like that. But I like went from, it was like Goosebumps, Harry Potter for a week, and then immediately into Stephen King. Like, I'm glad that was my trajectory. Because young adult fiction sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fuck off, Chuck Wendig.
That guy. I think he blocked me.
He blocked me too. I think he blocked a lot of people who were not fond of a certain political candidate in the lead up to the 2020 election.
Oh yeah, was he the one that was like, I can't wait to sit on my porch drinking fucking like a milkshake or something?
Yeah, he was the one who was like, wouldn't you rather have a great mom president than an abusive dad? He was one of the dudes who like clearly needed to talk to someone like professionally and not vent their thoughts on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's there's a lot to unpack.
Yep.
That's more to unpack there than when Agent Smith straight up calls the Oracle mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, good lord. All right, I have a take on Agent Smith, though.
Okay. For the record, just for anyone listening, you're like, hey, this is a long episode. The audio versions will be uncut. The YouTube version will be split down the middle when we officially move to Revolutions, just because... Yeah. This is a lot, but we're going to keep going.
There's no way these episodes weren't going to be epic, because also, even the next one, even if we come out of the next one like having no fucking idea what Resurrections was even about, I'm going to have to spend a lot of that time talking about the Matrix Online.
Yeah.
So these episodes are going to be a lot. I hope you enjoy our babbling.
Yeah, because if not, too fucking bad.
Agent Smith is the protagonist of life.
You're gonna have to elaborate.
All right, you know that tweet where it's like, what does this mean to me, the protagonist of life?
Oh.
That's the only way Agent Smith can view anything.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which is why he just keeps duplicating himself. He doesn't see anything inherent in the universe. He only understands the universe through himself, which is like what makes him a complete contrast to Neo. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whenever he sees anything, he's like, yeah, but how can I make it me? Because I'm the protagonist of life. So it's got to be me. And so he keeps spreading like a literal, like, cancer.
And, you know, some people might say, wow, that's not a very, like, insightful comment about society. But a lot of people tend to miss this, so maybe it is.
Maybe it is because a fucking guy who looks like he's a fucking agent from the Matrix built his whole political philosophy out of basically siding with Agent Smith.
Whoever are you referring to?
A guy with a 12-step program. Was it 12? I don't even remember. Our boy Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson.
Agent Smith is on a strictly meat diet.
Holy shit. Oh, God, I would love that.
Which is why that's what happened between the end of The Matrix and the beginning of The Matrix Reloaded. He was in a meat coma.
So you know what I kind of wanted? Like, here's the thing. Like, not to be, like, again, I should not write anything Matrix-related. I would fuck it up. But if you were going to do, with The Matrix 4, which is coming, and if you were going to bring Hugo Weaving back, which it appears like he's not back, I would love for, like Neo was unplugged and kind of freed from the Matrix, that Smith, too, is still freed, but he's just living, like, a boring human life now. He has no memory of being an agent, and like he keeps trying things to make himself better and he just can't do it. Like he always ends up doing the wrong thing. And so he is kind of like a Jordan Peterson type in like this new Matrix world. Like that's the weird future he's made for himself. He's just writing books. He's eating meat all the time. Like,
because it's a pure protein. It's manly.
Yeah,
it's very masculine. You can't have any signs of femininity or non-masculine conformity. That makes you weak.
At one point, this movie literally goes like, well, the father figure, the architect, is order, and the mother figure, the oracle, is chaos. And like that's Jordan Peterson's whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Except he's like, the chaos is bad. Like, and it's like, that's why you should hate your mother. We're telling you to clean your goddamn room, bucko. Like, goddamn.
Yeah, I got nothing bounced off that.
Is he still relevant? Didn't he end up in like a hospital?
Yeah, no, the joke about the meat coma is real.
Yeah, like he really ended up in a meat coma. Although, is that a cover for something?
It might be, because he was hiding out in some country in Eastern Asia for like a year.
There's something more. There's something more going on there.
No, totally. But like he was definitely in hiding for a while, and I'm curious about that.
It's like when they used to say Babe Ruth ate too many hot dogs. Like, they didn't want to be like, kids, he's fucking a drunk slob.
Yeah.
Like, there's something going on there. But he doesn't seem as relevant anymore. Does he still have a following?
I'm sure he does, but they're also like underground now.
I think they've all just like migrated to QAnon. Like everyone's just
that probably makes sense. Yeah,
ascended to QAnon.
Yeah. Ugh.
All right. The weird thing about the Agent Smith fight though is that like it's a cool fight, and then Neo just flies away at the end.
Yep, it's one of the instances in the film where you're like, okay, maybe that didn't need to go on as long.
I think there was some story about like they had like a completely different idea of how to do the fight, and like they shot most of it, and then at some point someone was like, this is actually impossible to do. Like, we can't do this with the technology we have today. So they had to like redo the whole fight, and the fight does kind of feel like it was a little thrown together. It's a pretty good fight considering, but yeah.
Now, that makes sense. I haven't heard that, but that makes sense. Back to the Bill Pope thing. He mentioned that certain sequences on the first Matrix, like regarding the bullet time effects, that the Wachowskis wanted to, like they described to him that like, we want a camera that can pan and whip around in like a split second so we can track the movement of an actual bullet. And like, it sounded feasible, like, because he was like, oh yeah, okay, let me try to rig something up. And then like the cameras would like fly off the rails, the film reels would snap off, and he was like, look, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. And I guess some 26-year-old kid from like Massachusetts was like, oh yeah, look, you just set up these 4 different like still cameras and you can do this. And I guess it's like the 3D effect that you can kind of do.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then they match that with like the digital technology and the VFX to like track it, so it looks like you're seeing the eye of a machine watching what's happening. And that's how you create bullet time, and it's like mind-blowing. So basically all that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, it makes sense that they were like kind of punching above their like the possible weight class of technology for these films, which is a good thing. You know, I that's why I love them.
You know who's like a dark doppelganger of the Wachowskis in this instance?
I don't know.
Uwe Boll.
What the fuck are you talking about?
He did a lot of like his weird, like very like shitty bullet time in movies like House of the Dead. Have you ever seen any of his shit?
Oh, like we have a history.
Yeah, like there's like, you know, where the camera's spinning around, and like I remember reading about like they had built some rig kind of like what you're describing, like the first version that would like fall apart and like, you know, like the cameras would like whip off of it and shit. Like I guess they built that for House of the Dead and used it, and then like they were required by like OSHA to destroy it after using it because it was so dangerous.
Oh my god.
I remember reading something like that about House of the Dead. There's all these weird like shots of that movie where like the camera spins around people and shit. That's the shots where like he edits the video game into the fucking movie.
Yeah, that dude. I'm glad he doesn't make movies anymore. Not because I don't like his movies. He just seems like an asshole.
Oh yeah, but he does make movies.
What? He still makes them?
No. Yeah, I think they just don't really get released anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably for the best.
Because I think it was that thing where like all his movies were like a fucking tax scam. Like, that was what kind of came out about him.
Wow.
Remember? Like they were like used to like launder money and like exploit like German finance laws, and then I guess those laws got changed.
Wow.
So hey, beat the system.
No, not even close. So you have thoughts about the fight? It's just
it's okay, I guess, is what I'm saying. I know some people really hate it. And,
it is not a beloved.
Tension. It's very attention free, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I guess that's the problem I think with a lot of the scenes in this movie is there's just like not a lot of tension going on for huge chunks of it. I don't know if I have anything else to really add to that.
I don't know. I think a lot of it does come down to the unfortunate middle chapter syndrome you hear about trilogies a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's like Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, Godfather Part 2 that don't have that, and Godfather Part 2 was never meant to lead into a Part 3 initially.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know, it's bound to happen more often than not, is what I'm saying. Oh, did I lose you?
No. I couldn't think of what to say next.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Two Towers, I would argue, doesn't have middle chapter syndrome either. Or Spider-Man 2.
I think Two Towers does.
Oh, well, you don't need to talk anymore then. That's fine.
Well, it's weird. The other one I would throw out was like Last Jedi, but like Last Jedi is weird where it's like it's still kind of the first chapter.
Yeah.
Like part of the flaw of Force Awakens is that it's only kind of like half of the first chapter.
Yeah.
And then I think Last Jedi is like the other half, but like it works in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only way to fuck that up is if you really fucked up the third one.
Yeah. Good thing that didn't happen.
Yeah. People are gonna reclaim that fucking movie.
It's I don't know, probably, but I don't know.
Will make some fucking movie that people like, and then everyone's like, "Actually, we've been misjudging the man."
I've seen people say it's the best directed Star Wars film, which is a lie.
Are those people now in a prison?
No, but they should be. They should be plugged into the Matrix. We should use their life force as batteries because they're not using their brain.
Yeah, if we have to start making a list of like who's going in first. It's those guys.
No.
Because they'll probably be the most susceptible to the program, frankly. Fucking people. All right, now we got to meet the Merovingian.
We kind of talked about him already, and he's just very French.
Yeah, he talks about causality a lot, and it's also like a weird like we're getting a lot of different interpretations of like what is free will and what is choice, like what really matters at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And Merovingian, he's like who leads like a very hedonistic lifestyle, is of course like falls in like cause and effect. It's just that shit. I think he gives the cake roofie, which is like so disgusting, honestly.
Yeah,
like that's another weird one.
He's like, "Oh, I designed it myself," and it's like, "This is." I feel like I shouldn't be watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Almost. And back in the first Matrix retrospective, you mentioned that like you felt maybe that the villains were maybe a little weak sauce, or not the villains, but like you know you open the first Matrix with Trinity killing cops, and then this one it's like there's some instances of cops hanging around, mostly in the highway chase, but it's not really a main focus of this film.
Yeah,
I think I would have agreed had I not just rewatched it. I think it makes sense for that to take a back seat for this one, at least, because now the focus is on like class, I guess more. Not that the first one wasn't, but like this one's very much punching at the upper class, the people who don't even have to worry about that. Yeah,
I could have just used one cop just biting it.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
There's a couple security guards that get it, but that's about it.
Yeah.
What was it? All right, now I guess here's if I, like I said, if I had to rewrite this shit, which I shouldn't, like I'm just fucking throwing ideas out there. I kind of wish that this big staircase fight was like the first time Neo kind of like got into a real fight in the movie. Because we've entered, like I said, we're in like the Merovingian underworld. Like he's basically, it's like, well, he's from an earlier version of the Matrix, which is like when we're starting to get the ideas that not only was there the first perfect Matrix, which was introduced in the first one, there was also this other one. And that's where the Merovingian comes from. And I don't know. I wish that like Neo could maybe go into this fight thinking like, oh, I can beat agents, I can take these guys. And the Merovingian's like, well, we're not from the Matrix, so we don't even have to live to the rules of the Matrix, so we could actually fucking kick your ass. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, maybe would have made the fight a little more tense. It's a cool fight. I like that staircase fight.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not very tense, but holy fuck, it's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And you know what? Shout out to Don Davis. Like the next, like the final 45 minutes of this film are just him just fucking going off on the score. It is like nonstop some of the greatest music you'll ever hear in a blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
It's remarkable stuff. And like, but that's also kind of it to talk about with that fight. You know, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, so cool. All right.
I do like when they unload the clip at him and the guy's Merovingian's like, oh, you're just a fucking idiot. Like, you're nothing like your predecessors, which is a weird, that I actually had never picked up on that he's like, your predecessors did much better, which is something I just never picked up on.
Me too.
That he just straight up says that, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then like they unload the clip and he stops all the bullets and then he's like, all right, you got some skill. Mm-hmm. Like, that's pretty funny. And then they get chased by the Ghost Twins.
Yeah, those are fun henchmen. Don't know what the deal is there.
No, they're ghosts. Although, again, to talk about like a movie that's a little confusing, like we see them get shot and then they can do the ghost thing and it heals themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So when they blow up at that one scene, you're like, wait, are they dead or not?
I know.
Like, it's so weird. It's so many like weird little things like that add up, you know?
Or like, I love the scene where Trinity traps them on the door and then she starts shooting their arm. And it's like, like they could have just phased through that though, right?
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's something about that guy being stuck. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really understand it either, but I love the action with them.
The fight in the car is a really good moment.
The whole The whole highway chase is fucking grandstanding ovation worthy.
Yeah.
Like it's just constantly some of the coolest shit ever. And there's thankfully the film Twitterverse picked up on the one scene where where Morpheus gets out of the car and he faces the twin vehicle head on, pulls out his samurai sword and his Glock, and then he slices the sword against the vehicle, makes it flip over, and as it turns over, he shoots at the bottom of the engine, makes the vehicle explode. And I think the caption was like, every shot in this scene is the greatest shot ever until the next successive greatest shot ever.
Mythbusters time, shooting a car engine like that wouldn't cause it to explode.
Oh, okay.
Busted.
Well, this
movie
film is
sucks.
bad now.
I think that was one of the early things they did on Mythbusters.
Like verbatim, like approaching this scene.
Yeah, like I think they used this scene as the example.
Oh, yeah, the scene with the ghost twin assassins, and they're like, this car wouldn't explode like that. That's pretty fucking funny.
Mythbusters had its place.
No. I am not anti-Mythbusters. I just think that it's very funny.
Adam Savage worked on these movies.
Oh, that's great.
It's one of his last things he did before Mythbusters. So there's a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, the car chase rules. I like that the agents show up. Like it's weird, like to see like the different people chasing each other and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of fun. I like that Neo like. It's that one thing where like I think Link tells him he's 500 miles on the other side of the world or something like that.
Yeah. When
he takes off the fly, so it makes sense that it takes him like a good like 10 minutes to get there, which is still insanely fast. But that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Also, I gotta say, favorite character in the movie, probably the Keymaker.
Oh, he's so lovable.
I fucking love this guy.
Yeah.
I just love that he's just has all those keys, and he's just got that great moment where Trinity's like, "I need you to tell me how to hotwire," and then like he just pulls a key out. He's like, "Oh, never mind."
Oh no, he's great. And there's this overhead shot when he's escaping. He's like, "I will not go back." And then Trinity and Morpheus chasing after him, and it's this overhead shot of him opening the doors. There's a lot of like anime influence on this series, obviously. That shot is like straight out of an anime. Like, I don't know why, but the image, I could just see it like an animation format. With the little dude with a bunch of keys just jogging down the hallway for his life. And I don't know why, that just screamed anime to me. I don't know, but I love that little guy.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, he shouldn't have died.
Well,
they should have taken him to the real world. Put him in Harry Lennox's body.
Probably. I think that's the moment where you're kind of like, this system's also oppressive against the programs too, you know, like, which is kind of one of the through lines throughout these movies.
Yeah, where it's like, well, wait, if the programs like are also inhabiting this system, then are they also just meant to like orchestrate what they're ordered to do, or are they also capable of like their own free will if they want it? Like, what is the extent of that? And I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean, like, the film made me think about that.
Yeah. Which I can't think of the last blockbuster that made you do that.
Yeah, you know, because like so often, like something like Terminator, it's much more clear cut about like the machines being like just a system of oppression and like evil, and that's totally fine. That's what those movies are going for. But here it's like no. If there's like artificial intelligence, that's still intelligence. That is still something that is like a tangible like entity. That thing exists now. They probably deserve a little more than we're getting. And so something like the Animatrix, I think it was the Animatrix, that taps into like, oh, the machines were like oppressed before, and so some machine uprising was in itself a revolution.
Yeah, the second renaissance.
Yeah.
From the Animatrix. We would talk about the Animatrix, but we do not have fucking time.
Yeah, we're already like 2.5 hours into this, so I apologize, everyone. But
speaking of long time to do something, an hour and 38 minutes into the movie, we finally get a shot of the Sentinels digging.
Well, you know, they're just catching.
There's how you order some scenes that can affect how a film flows. You know.
Yeah.
And I will say, I made that comment in the first Matrix about how I thought, like, oh, I could have used more, like, fight and authority. I forgot that a big part of this movie was them blowing up a nuclear power plant. Which is, hey, 2003, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I don't think we remember that basically we stopped building nuclear power plants for a while after 9/11. I'm sure George Bush had no ulterior motives to stop the rise of nuclear power and make oil more necessary.
I
will say, this is something that always bugged me as a kid. And it's like I get it now, but like it's so weird where like the Keymaker gives the whole speech about like we have to do these things at this exact time or it won't work, right?
Right.
And so we can't make a single mistake. And then, of course, something happens that, like, derails it. And as a kid, I'm like, well, it's already fucked up. Like, why bother? Like, I didn't get, like, as a kid, I was like, oh, I thought he said if it didn't go right, they lost. And then it didn't go right. So I'm like, oh, shit, they lost. That always kind of confused me as a child. And Neo tells Trinity not to go into the Matrix because he thinks she's going to die, and she has to go in because the shit happens,
And Neo meets the architect after the Keymaker is killed by many Agent Smiths.
Well, we forget that Smith showed up in the back room. Back room Smith.
He almost turns Morpheus, too.
Yeah, that's a scene. That feels like something that you're like, oh shit, that might actually happen. Then you're like, wait, I know how the sequel goes. Like
there you go. But that scene is a little tense still. I was like, oh shit.
Well, because the Smith in this is kind of like this weird, like we don't really know what he's doing.
Like we get an early instance of some other of the freedom fighters they're getting the call to exit the Matrix, and they're like, "Did you see that? I've never seen an agent do that before. All right, you first." And then the other guy gets it, who comes back into play later. But it's like you're not seeing it, so we don't know what they're reacting to yet. But there, I think it's at least like it at least works in some capacity because we can tell that they're scared. You know, we get an emotion out of it that's easier to like latch onto, other than the machines are digging at fire. like you know.
The architect scene is the best scene in the movie.
Okay. All right. I mean,
unless you're a weak idiot.
Let me let me explain a lot right now.
Like the architect did?
Yes. Ergo, if you understand the original Matrix, you are now ready to understand the Matrix Reloaded. Do you remember one of the first instances in the original Matrix is passing through a view screen similar to the one the architect has?
Yes. Yeah. I know where you're going with this.
So the Matrix is all about not just control, free will, identity, revolution, anti-capitalism, anti-fascism. Bless you. Also, it is about that there are beings in control that will always, like, Big Brother is out there, but it's not something that's tangible, which is why I think that video essay I brought up was so invested in the idea that like Smith himself is being watched and viewed, and that he's trying to gain control over himself by taking control of everything. Now, the architect scene, I don't know if it's the best scene in the movie. It is far from the worst, and I think it's actually quite good. Now, my reaction to it this time was like, okay, I've been into like all these other monologue stuff. I'll probably be into that because obviously everyone remembers the architect scene. It's not something you forget, but it did hit me like a freight train where I was just like, oh shit, like this is just the scene. Like it's them talking, and there's some like really great like visual play here where they're passing through the screen back to Matrix I keep calling people in the Matrix like to Neo's reactions. Every like evolving reaction he has shifts the perspective of the audience into another screen inside the wall of the architect's screens, and it just keeps going that way. And it's like Neo is so insignificant. He is so small and worthless in the grand scheme of things if he keeps following down a certain path. This is a genius move in a franchise film.
Oh, no, it's great.
It is fucking brilliant. It is so ridiculously exciting to have an idea that's genuinely challenging in a follow-up to one of the most popular films of all time.
I mean, even just the first shot is fantastic, where he walks through the door of light and, like, you know, the screen fills with light. He basically ascends, you know. We get, like, a brief, like, 2001 moment. Like, we see the whole universe for, like, half a second.
Yeah.
And then the camera just keeps pulling out, and then it's like, nope, it's a TV screen. Like, that's fucking great.
Yeah, and no, you know? That's not the universe. It is the universe, ergo the Matrix. It is a universe inside of universes, which also brings out the idea that, like, just because this place isn't real and it is a system meant for control doesn't mean it can't be so much more than that if it was allowed to flourish on its own, which is another idea that comes up at the end of Revolutions. And it's just, it just keeps going. You keep going down the rabbit hole. Like in the first Matrix, Morpheus, he'll like see how far the rabbit hole goes. And it's like almost 20 years on and we're still seeing how far it goes. Anyways, this movie broke my brain.
All right, not to be like, I don't know, a douche or something. I don't know what I'm gonna be, but 10 years old in the theater watching this, I totally understood this scene.
Okay.
Not in a like where we're getting like now, where it's like, man, it just goes deeper and deeper and shit like that. Like I have this weird comparison where it's like I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey when I was really young. And I got the movie, but I couldn't like explain it, you know? Like you can mentally understand like what's happening. Like my brain got it, but like I couldn't if you put me down and be like explain what that movie's about, I probably couldn't say it. I like that's why the architect scene like really worked for me, and probably why like I didn't walk out of the movie negative like other people maybe did. And but the most important thing is like he drops all this deep stuff on there, but he throws out like very specific stuff that I can't believe audiences like couldn't keep up with that. Where it's just like he really, if you only want to look at him from a functional level, his job is to point out like that you're like the sixth time we've done this, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, that there's multiple matrices, we've done this over and over again. This narrative is a form of control in and of itself, and now you got to make the choice.
And did you catch this? This is the other thing I wanted to bring up with the architect earlier. This is the other thing I wanted to bring up also regarding what people have fought in the revolutions and whatnots, right? Mm. Did you catch that because it's like the sixth time or whatever, it is not the years of 2100. It is like almost the year 2900 at this point.
Yeah.
These people don't even know that this struggle's been going on for longer than it has been. It is like no one talks about that. I don't know if a lot of people caught that, and I'm willing to concede that might be a flaw of the film. Not a like groundbreaking one, not a game changing one, but like something that maybe could have used a little more emphasis as well.
Well, one thing I will say that is a little confusing, just in terms of, like, lore, like, this doesn't really matter in terms of the movie. Like, the architect's like, look, we're going to destroy all this stuff. You get to select 12 humans to start over, right? I think that's the number he says.
Yeah, something like that.
I also think he pulls, like, a Dr. Strangelove, where he's like, you got to pick X number of women. You have to pick more women than guys, right? Mm-hmm. So that you can procreate more, which is straight up from Dr. Strangelove. When he's like, we gotta have 10 females to each male, which is like a classic, like, oh, we're fucking ourselves into extinction, you know? Mm-hmm. Classic Kubrick shit. I think in the lore of the Matrix that every time the Matrix resets, it jumps back to the beginning of the 20th century, right? Mm-hmm. So that means it's about 100 years every time. I'm not sure if that timeline really makes sense. I'm not sure if that's really enough to, populate Zion to the levels as that, even if you're freeing tons of people, you know?
You know, this is a problem I have with a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction, because I think you're right. And another show I brought up on here a lot is The 100, and that show is like, we haven't been on the ground on Earth in 100 years because of nuclear war, and it's not habitable anymore. And it turns out the nuclear war wasn't that bad, and tribes of humanity still existed, and now they have their own languages and their own culture, and it's like, could you do all that in 100 years? Like, I don't think that's accurate. I don't
like
I think
big
people
shifts
would
can
remember.
happen, but it you know, and it also feels like part of it is like you're supposed to be like, well, there's distances between each collapse and rebuilding of Zion, so like the new generation won't remember, blah blah blah.
Yeah, again, closer to 2900 than 2100.
Yeah. It's you know, I don't know, there's something a little off about that in terms of lore. Like that's just lore bullshit, so it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I see some people get like close but no potato with it on YouTube in like the comment section, where they think that every time the Matrix reset, it literally goes back to the beginning of human history. Mm. So that like the Matrix, every form of the Matrix lasts for like thousands of years. And I'm like, that's not how it really works. But hey,
also like. You know, it's the thing in the first Matrix where Morpheus is telling Neo, like, have you ever had a dream that you were so convinced was real? Because, like, it's something that Inception will also tap into, where, like, your dreams, you don't really remember how you got there, but you don't question it either because it's not something you're thinking about because you're in the moment. And so that's, like, the system of control inside the Matrix. You're not going to think about how you woke up this morning. You know.
Speaking of having a dream that you thought was real, I'm not even joking. Fucking last night, I had the fucking most terrifying dream.
Was it about the werewolves?
No, it was not about the werewolves.
Okay.
No, because it was like very real. It was me driving my car, and I drove it off a bridge on accident. Yeah, and like I hit something, and my car went like flying off a bridge, and I was like in the car, like falling as it's like spinning. It's like a high bridge, like, you know, like a fucking like the Golden Gate Bridge or some shit.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm spinning in this car, and I'm like, Jesus Christ! I like literally was like, this is how I fucking die. I thought it was fucking real. Like, it was, and then the worst part is that I kind of whipped me out. It's like, maybe it's just a fucking dream. Maybe it's just a fucking dream. Maybe it's just a fucking dream. And like, I'm trying to get myself to wake up, and I'm not waking up, and then I wake up. And then I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. So that's my way of saying I woke up at 3 a.m. today and couldn't get back to sleep.
Okay.
So it's been a weird day.
All right.
Which might explain some of my energy on this episode.
Yeah.
Neo chooses to save Trinity.
Yes, because he makes
He
a
flies
choice
so
regardless
fast,
of whether or not someone made it for him.
Yeah.
And he rewrites the Matrix to be able to pump her heart again after she's shot.
Yeah. He's going full Jesus mode.
Yeah, it's...
You know, as someone goes sicko mode, he's going Jesus mode.
It's that George Costanza meme. I gotta get into Jesus mode.
Oh, no.
I've been rewatching Seinfeld, and you know what the fucking saddest thing is? I see a lot of people in my life that I can like correlate to George Costanza.
My family calls me George Costanza.
You know, everyone relates to George and Elaine from Seinfeld. I think we're gonna pivot into like Kramer after the pandemic.
Oh no, there's a ton of Kramers out there.
Yeah. Remember my friend Mo Atta?
Oh Christ! Oh, the best piece of comedy in the 21st century.
But
I thought he'd just write to his congressman. Like, you can hear Kramer saying it. Like, it's so good. What a brilliant. What brilliant.
But the Matrix Reloaded. I think the ending's a little flat.
I like that he saves her.
No, that's great. That's great. I love it.
I wish it had ended there. But then we got to get out of the Matrix. And then there's the cool moment. I think it's a fine note to end on with him destroying the Sentinels, you know, outside of the Matrix, which he's never done before.
Yeah, I remember that, like, when I was younger, being like, whoa, wait. Like, because I was like, oh, cool. The Matrix thing got it. Oh, he's not in the Matrix. Wait.
And that leads to that stupid debate that people still have where it's like, maybe he is still in the Matrix.
Yeah, anyone who argues that is an idiot. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's not what the movie's saying.
It's, again, close but no potato. Like kinda, you know, he's still in a system of control. It's just he's not physically in a Matrix. Like, but hey, and then it just keeps going, and it just ends on the worst possible shot ever.
Well, also, we have to mention that they explain that the counterattack that Commander Locke was doing to stop the machines was sabotage. Not that it looked like it was going to be a pretty picture after anyways, but it was intentionally sabotaged with an EMP, and the surviving machines wiped out the fleet. And the person responsible for that, who they believe might be responsible for that, is now in a coma across from an unconscious Neo. And that is Agent Smith inside the human's body that he inhabited earlier.
To be concluded.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad shot to end the movie.
Yeah, I remember a lot of sequels before they led into like their third final chapter. They had a lot of big cliffhangers. Halo 2 had a big one that was criticized, and I always thought that one was awesome. It's like, sir, I'm gonna finish this fight. Oh, there you go. That's what the third one's about. It's a third act, whatever. Attack of the Clones has a big cliffhanger. I think that one wraps up fine. Two Towers.
That was just weird, where it's like, begun now, the Clone War has. And also, like, that shot was in like every trailer, so it is a little weird when like the last shot of your movie is in every trailer for the movie.
Yeah. Stop doing that. To all the marketers listening to this very popular podcast, stop doing that, please.
Yeah. I think it would be nice if maybe, like, you just go, hey, let's only use footage from the first half of the movie in our trailer.
If you want to know something really cool, apparently the Matrix Resurrection is using a lot of stuff just from, like, the first hour.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Can't wait to watch the 7-hour movie.
Anyways, I don't know. I mean, compared to what usually fucking happens, you know.
Yeah. I'm excited. No, it's gonna be good. At this point, you can't convince me that movie's gonna be bad.
Yeah. Like, if I'm a Jupiter Ascending defender, like, there's a good chance I'm gonna like it.
It's one of those things where, like, if it's bad, I won't be able to admit it. Like, I'm at that point, you know?